Real Goddess. Prologue. Discovering Your Divine Destiny by Cherie Sandel. I'm standing on a high mountain peak nestled among other towering mountain peaks. Everything about the moment is perfect. The sun is warm at its perfect pitch, the breeze just enough to cool off the skin. Hunger is nowhere to even think about. Flowers, pines, and freshness emit their lustrous combined scent. I see cotton ball clouds amid a piercing blue sky. I look down to see wildflowers every color of the rainbow in full beckoning bloom. As I do so, I realize I'm wearing a white, pale blue gown, the likes of Galadriel on Lord of the Rings. My hair is long, blonde, braided, and comforting, taking up its perfect space. In a word, I feel enchanting. I look further down and off to the left side, where I notice a high alpine lake, pristine and framed attractively by the firs surrounding it. No surprise, there's my husband sitting on the perfect rock, fishing pole in hand, equally enjoying the lure of this beaming afternoon. Would he look up and smile at me? No, he's content exactly where he is and where I am, and there's no unbalanced wanting or expectation. Just, well, perfection. I look further down the mountain into the valley on the right, where a quaint village plays out. Young ladies in laced front calico dresses hanging the laundry, amenable boys in leather breeches fetching the water, everyone doing their happy bidding among the A-frame village as a mountain stream meanders through the docile scene. I look off in the center distance to notice the mountains across the way still bathed in crystalline snow. Amazing, as I am presently experiencing perfect sunny weather on my side of the mountain. But the portrait of the snowy scene represents seasons, all of which serve their integral purpose. I have lived my life as I intended before spirit met with body. I've made it to Goddess. There need be no more hints of suffering, of learning from everyday trials, of knowing yet another sun will rise, and with it the joys and sorrows of mortality. I've gained my final reward. I have perfect access to the perfect divine Creator, my Heavenly Father. As His offspring, a real goddess, with a flick of my hand I can brandish delightful change in any which way I desire for the world in my view. Add another mountain, fabricate another village, create a rainbow with colors the likes of those I've never beheld. And all along with godhood freedom comes the choice to bask in God's omnipresence, enjoy my well-deserved own, and invite anyone into my space I desire. Because all along, familiar to me in earthly life, I've been a goddess in training. Chapter 1. Eternal Perspective. I've been told again and again from my religious teachings of earthly life, live with an eternal perspective. And with that, I imagine a string piercing from one end of my vision into the pre-eternities, then that same string projecting in the other direction for an also never-ending trajectory. Earthly life exists on a little dot at the center of my vision. Here I am right now in the confines of this singular, compacted dot. Yet it all feels so much larger in the here and now. I finally ask the wanting question. In the eternities, will I also be thinking of the forevers? The determined answer, no. In the eternal perspective you live currently. Hence, just as I figured, an eternal perspective is really a mindfulness practice, living presently in the here and now. So when I foresee myself standing as a goddess on that high mountain peak, it is very much in the present. Not what I have been doing or will be doing. It's the perfect sun, on the perfect skin, in the perfect moment, with my husband happily fishing off to the side. To live presently in earthly life with an eternal perspective means to live with the values and standards that will bring the promised rewards while filling up the now as fully and completely as you expect it to one eventual resurrected day. I've heard it said, "Be where you are when you are there." My mortal mind asks, "Huh?" My goddess mind answers, "When you are with someone in your space, they are the center of your universe. When you are working on a task, that is your center. When you immerse yourself in someone else's story in word or moving picture, that becomes your surrogate center. And inclusive at all, to become a goddess, when you worship, that is the culmination of always having God at your center and power source, no matter what you are doing in the other presently full moments. This awareness for me has allowed me to calm the frenzied tendency to multitask. And by multitask, I'm more referring to flitting from one project to another than the wise use of a variety of mediums we might intentionally engage ourselves simultaneously. For example, listening to a podcast while mending a hole in a jacket. I think it funny that the men and women of this planet seek so arduously for answers. Through science, literature, history, math, philosophy, and so forth. On and on they spin, seeking for the wise eminence of those with enough certification and degrees. Those professionals become the golden standard, writing book upon book and thesis upon thesis as their conclusions forever change. For example, in the early 1900s, we were encouraged to make sure we get both vitamins in our diet. Yet we as a society adhere to the present conclusions the authorities assert. Despite their forever changing theorizing, we morph happily along with. My definition of education: seeking to know what God already knows. Perhaps God laughs at his children down in their mountain valleys as they vie for the highest awards and acclamations that are but a speck of his omniscient knowing, yet garner such prestige among earthlings. In the end, we return to what we were before we entered this earthly experience, spirits bent on knowing what God knows and willingly grants to those who are ready and who merely ask him. Chapter 2. The Divine Feminine. I remember my best friend, a girl, asking me in 4th grade, "Would you rather be a boy or a girl? I think it would be so cool to be a boy." I'd never considered it, as I didn't know there was a choice, and still believe there isn't. But after a few months' thought, I concluded I would also prefer to be a boy. Lest there be any question, I am unequivocally female. So before we continue, let's bring to light the difference of the masculine and feminine qualities we each imbue. The best way I can simply describe this difference is that masculine energy is square and feminine energy is round. The masculine is goal-centric, solution-minded, forward and progressive, and more intensive in its yang portrayal. The feminine is creative-centric, beautification-minded, inward and reflective, more nurturing in its yin essence. The man shows up with his square shoulders and jawline, his set brow, his explosive yet conclusive solving. The woman carries herself with the rounded belly of motherhood, with the soft eyes of reading the soul, with her fluid and compassionate ways. You may argue that each gender has both sets of characteristics, and you would be right. It's when the embracing of each becomes unbalanced and misallocated that it can present as the wounded masculine and feminine. Ironically, the wounding of each archetype manifests in criticism, judgment, and shame. For example, a man may not want to appear limp-wristed when really he's crying out for sympathetic attention for the struggles and opposition he faces. The world might instead encourage, "Be a man, be strong, you can do it." A woman may try to be strong as everyone in her circle encourages just that thing, when really she can't manage what she's been handed and needs to be open to others shouldering burdens in her behalf. He or she wants to be anything but the thing he or she desperately needs. I well remember the day I realized I had completed the cycle of my 4th grade wishing I could be a boy, to becoming the grown, almost grandmother-age woman that peered through squarish eyes, wielding her too-heavy sword, standing atop a towering ladder in the apple orchard, pruning. I had squashed out my feminine by the safety of my overly masculine controlling. I completely oversaw the finances and functions in our home, knowing who was where at all times, took on home projects I could barely perform, worked all the landscaping of our large property, and cooked as if my life depended on it. I had projected my thoughts out years into the future of what I might accomplish, unable to exist happily in the present and be satisfied with just being. The beloved piano music I once created was but a memory. I was doing laundry this day those years back, having just completed a batch of denim jeans. As I set out the pants along the edge of my bed, I couldn't tell whose jeans were mine or whose were my husband's. They looked exactly alike in every way, from the faded blue to the medium practical cut to the wearing knees. I gasped as the reality hit me. Who really wore the pants in this family? I soon found the height difference between the two sets as I quickly hid the evidence tucked away in the closet. I determined to seek out some jeans with fancy bling on the back pocket, while I figured an escape out of my domineering ways. You see, here was the unspoken guideline in our marriage. The man may be the head of the family, but the woman is the neck that turns the head. In other words, the man sits atop his throne, whilst the woman does his and everyone's bidding. A lost queen. Then I heard of a woman who seemed to mirror my same over-giving patterns. A light in my manlike wilderness. Someone who had been there and now brandishes mascara and lip gloss among her furry, cozy pillows. Now, I'm not saying to recapture the feminine you must become a makeup guru, but I am suggesting there be a difference between our species' genders, which this exemplar woman espoused. When balanced and appropriately owned, the masculine and feminine sides of both of us create a wondrous alchemy that serves us and others in ways that both build and nourish. For example, a father treating his toddler daughter with tenderness and gentleness when she is afraid in the night. An otherwise tough man crying as he bears testimony of his deepest beliefs. And alternately, a woman with much intellect and drive serving as a president of a famous food corporation. A mother bear when her cubs are under attack. Of course, sometimes life throws us into both roles, depending on the cards dealt to us. So why the divine in the divine feminine? We must understand the synergism of the two genders coming together as God intended. Firstly, God intended the woman as the nurturer in the family system, one who guides and teaches lovingly, in many capacities and ways. And secondly, by divine design, a man provides for his family and protects them. You can see in his very physique why this is so. Men are built as the box that protects. But as we've already alluded to, when a woman becomes boxy, her curves lose their satisfaction and her parallelism loses its chic. I believe that a myriad of ways exists as to how we fulfill these healthy feminine and masculine characteristics in happy living, and that by keeping our spirits in tune with God's Spirit, we can remember the contract or blueprint by which we agreed to abide in our mortal experience. In short, God will guide us specifically how to show up in our most true essence because He is our Creator. It's like a baker knowing exactly how the final cakes will bake up because she combined them herself. Divine also because I believe we are on the earth at this time to be worthy to receive eternal divinity as our final reward for a well-lived life on earth. Because God so thoroughly protects His queen, it is with much reverence that I assert that like you and I can become a goddess, so do we have a model goddess from which to aspire. It is simple spiritual genetics that like mother, like daughter also, in our own individual uniqueness. Note, I continue to honor God's reverence for his sweetheart by only referring to her here selectively, but know that referring to God also refers to the qualities of his queen. I once chatted with my tween daughter about her divinity, that the price of a virtuous woman is far above rubies. She knew rubies were special because I had given her a ruby ring belonging to my mother and had emphasized the care she must take for that heirloom ring. I explained to her, in God's eyes, seeing as we are only one spiritual generation away from godhood, we are fabulously valuable to him. She turned to me asking in awe, 1 generation? Yes, indeed. I could feel her understanding dawn of her great intrinsic worth, of which we all share the trait. Chapter 3. Goddess Nature. One important piece of attaining our goddesshood lies in understanding our relationship to those around us. A true goddess doesn't despise, envy, belittle, or disparage other women in an inferior or superior way. She doesn't want for what she seemingly doesn't have, because the truth of it is that what she admires in those who have what she covets is actually the traits for which she is already surprisingly full. Those things of which she berates herself for also exist within her identity basket. Think of it like a mirror. What you see in others that you love or hate is also what you possess yourself that you love or hate. Tricky? Yes. But take a moment to see this through wanting eyes. What do you so admire in another woman that you feel will never be yours? Go ahead. It shouldn't be hard. Do you wish you were as upbeat, clever, or sassy as another woman? Can you turn it around and detect your upbeat, clever, and sassy self that perhaps hasn't shown its full face yet? And on the other end of the spectrum, what do you so despise in another woman? Is it that she's a slob, a snob, or practically clueless? With a dose of compassion, also turn this around and decipher these very deniable traits in yourself. When are you a slob, a snob, or practically clueless? Can you empathize with both sides? If you can, excellent! You have just opened a very large door down the goddess path. Others' greatness and faults show up glaringly when we most possess them, and the very awareness helps us see them for what they are. Information about the self, and an opportunity to love others as you can love yourself. Taken a step further, I have a very important question for your goddess mind. Can you recognize God's spark within you? Do you feel you possess the spiritual DNA, the divine cells, and magnificent potential as God's daughter, one of his goddesses in training? And do you think within every soul with which you come in contact, they are also embedded with God's spark? Yes, I'm speaking of those souls perhaps even revolting to you, or of whom are so dark there is little hope for them. Can you look into the eyes of a stranger and witness divine love deep within? These are the very stirrings of your soul that enable your goddess to emerge, because your divinity is reflected from others back to you and back to them. This is the awakening of your spirit, companionable with all creatures on this lovely earth, that you one day will also bear similar fruit. So the next question must be addressed. What is your understanding of God's nature? One easy way to determine your true beliefs behind your Creator is to assign 3 characteristics behind how you portray God in your life. Is he respectful? Is he harsh? Is he like your earthly father of origin? Is he demanding? Is he humorous? What does perfect mean in relation to your God ideal despite religion? Now I ask, how accurate do you believe is your depiction of him? If you were to ask him how close you are to describing him, do you believe he would agree? And now your homework. Perhaps the most important homework you will ever do. Go to our Heavenly Father in prayer and ask him of his true nature, for the answer has everything to do with the way you perceive your own divine identity. I will give a little hint, but don't let it interfere in your prayerful asking. Among the top 3 identities should be the word loving, or you are not accurately describing the source of your goddess energy. Meditation. I saw God in a tree. Your perfect world. Imagine a beautiful tree full of pinkish-purple blossoms reaching outward and heavenward, inviting the initiation of spring in its splendid array. The awe of its presence seems to qualify God was in the making. My friend once told me she saw God in such a resplendent tree. She was able to partake of His majesty in the display of its wonderment. Of course, God isn't in the tree, but God's nature is evidenced in the raw, splendid beauty of that tree in bloom, as it is everywhere else He creates things of goodness. Martin Luther said, God writes the gospel not in the Bible alone, but also on the trees, and in the flowers and clouds and stars. God's essence is all around us. See in your mind's eye a new baby being birthed. I understand. Your first impulse may be to give the poor mother some privacy, but I want you to go there. Be in her space as you witness that head emerging from her womb, through the cervix and out into the world. As the tiny head crowns and assistants crouch to be ready for its emergence, it's as if a halo preludes the event, christening the moment as a new soul becomes bathed in new light, basking in its first breath. It displays the perfectly formed curvature of the ear, the 10 teensy well-formed fingernails, the umbilical cord as its outworn life force. And when it finally manages to see loving faces around, we behold the blue window eyes that attach to its mother like a cord of light. A new mind, a new embodiment, a new vitality enters humanity. Heart, mind, and breath collide as a new soul, the likes of which will never again grace the planet in its exact way, claiming its signature reality. A new baby is not happenstance. It didn't get blown into existence as the effects of the Big Bang Theory. It hasn't lived incarnation upon incarnation like some assert, though as I represented in my opening goddess view, we have pre-existed, as one spirit, as one intelligence, as its own mind capable of choice, merely without its body, until it begins its sojourn on earth, and will continue into the hereafter, owning her just reward for an eternal life well earned. Imagine God's infinite ability to replicate baby after baby, person after person, fingerprint after unique fingerprint, distinguished as unmatched from any other being on the planet. Such is the opportunity of the goddess, to have infinite options for her creating. Think of it like this. Say you could enter a mega craft store that sells every type of implement or resource for every kind of hands-on creating, be it scrapbooking, cooking, artistry, flower arranging, sewing, interior decorating, and on and so forth. This must be like heaven, for you have won a shopping spree for anything you can fit into a small house. You fill cart after cart of what you've always dreamed of affording, appreciating your windfall of good luck. But dream on, for you have also won a small house, one room big that you may decorate or have decorated to your heart's desire, to manifest the supplies you've won to full fruition, set anywhere your heart desires. Naturally, you have plenty of space and organizing capacity to store your new wares. You may add a loft, arched windows to your pleasure, a maintenance-free fireplace, and a porch swing to add a quaint touch. Your visualizing is the extent of the possibilities. I used to joke with my young sons that in heaven you can have a whole room full of Legos if you'd like. What else will you add? How about a friend who gets along with you swimmingly, who loves the same resources of the bounty of which you've partaken, and especially loves to be in your company, and you in hers? Again, the sky is the limit. Perhaps it's your soulmate, the father of your children or future children. The goddess potential I've described is in the beautiful pink-blossomed tree. Her ceaseless stewardship over her elements is endless and ever so satisfying. To top it off, let's say no thing in her world creates cleanup. Is this not the perfect world described here? If not, I encourage you to find out your perfect world, because it's yours for the taking. What would this all be worth to possess the advantage of the goddess? Would it be worth loving your neighbor? Would it be worth overlooking the slight of others who haggle over if the effort will be worth it themselves? Is it worth humbling yourself to hear the word of God and following what He suggests for your life? Would it be worth paying less attention to yourself and more about loving others in behalf of God? What would you be willing to sacrifice for goddesshood? Not only is it possible, it is probable that you are in good running for the goddess. God hopes fervently that each baby upon baby and person upon person and fingerprint upon unique fingerprint makes it back into His heavenly presence. There is no limit on who can enter, for the glory and capability and possibility of Godhood doesn't discriminate on the righteous. There is no one on earth who has sinned too much, for the atonement of His Son, Jesus Christ, redeems those fallen and enables their overcoming their wrongdoings. If it's a question for qualifying, all get a pass who have been born, but the goddess must follow divine law and prove herself worthy to inherit the traits that shall one day pass to her own spirit children. And straight and narrow is that way that leads to life eternal. She is saved after all that she can do to maintain the light, through her faith and good works, and by the mercy and grace of He, our Saviour, who can qualify us. And that way is through baptism by immersion for the remission of sins, repentance, and receiving the gift of God's Holy Ghost, who works in our behalf to guide us back to Him.
Chapter 4. Refining Your Diamond Goddess. Differentiation. My young daughter and I once perused a holiday boutique, where she ran upon a gorgeous keepsake locket with a hinge that showcased exchangeable emblems personifying the owner through a small transparent glass. Things such as a tiny flower or a star, the holder's initial, a meaningful word or saying could be held within. She fell in love with it and requested it for her 8th birthday. The cost was exorbitant to me, and I delighted in finding a knockoff locket online where I bought both her and me the perfect versions with a delightful array of personalized emblems, and still had cash to spare. Later, as I pondered on the supplier of the original, more expensive locket, I wondered upon the disparity of costs and who would be willing to pay for the exorbitant product. I insert here that though a goddess in training may adopt an abundance concept, that I really could purchase and have whatever I put my mind and heart to, but as a smart consumer, I still have my limits and good judgments. As a business school graduate, I thought upon the concept of supply and demand, upon the model of a SWOT analysis, that is, S, strengths, W, weaknesses, O, opportunities, and T, threats, SWOT, and came to a conclusion. With the original locket company, the strengths the company offered were exclusivity, higher value and satisfaction, keeping in mind I was pleasing an 8-year-old girl with a knockoff company, and greater customer service. The weaknesses were that the product cost more and the value fluctuated based on demand, good or bad press, and so forth. Yet opportunities abounded with varying the product to please the wearer. A threat was the knockoff company. The knockoff could create more product with less time and cost, being more streamlined and available, hence a potential higher pool of customers. Yet it also possessed a lower value with less customer service, which fortunately my daughter and I both delighted at our new acquisitions without need for further support. Think of your big box stores and mega warehouses that certainly supply, but don't always satisfy. The original company would be more differentiated, set apart, a higher standard, unique and distinct, a diamond among stones, if you will. The other side, the knockoff company, is more integrated, meaning the association between the consumer and the brand is relevant and simple. things integrated are kept basically straight across the board. So how does differentiation and integration apply to you and me as potential goddesses? I believe there are no knockoffs in heaven, no cheaper lockets. The eventual goddess is unique and distinct, set apart a higher standard, with the greatest of customer service, immediate and up-and-personal contact with her omnipotent and holy creators. If this earth life is practiced at becoming like her personal designers, she won't be integrated, relevant, simple, straight across the board. She will be a one-of-a-kind diamond worthy of acclaim and commendation, because she made it. So who is she to live on earth as an integrated, worn-out, straight across the board human doing that anyone might be wearing around their neck? What must she do to rise up, to stand to the full height she, and anyone else of her fellow potential knockoffs in the running, has been spiritually created to become? Much like Michelangelo, who painted thousands of details on the ceiling of the Sistine Chapel, our Heavenly Father has embedded innumerable divine details in our DNA that compose a stunning picture of who we really are. From Hannah de Tavis. As her refined diamond sparkles more brilliantly with her burgeoning awareness of her differentiation, she can settle into the truth that she was made for victory.
Chapter 5. Knowing Adversity. Though it pains me to go here, it must be done. I promise to keep it short, like removing a band-aid, for I believe it is true that where attention goes, energy flows. And as a goddess in training, you must attend to the divine. But you must also understand the enemy, for there is rightly opposition in all things. There is one Satan who at one time had the potential to also become a god like any of God's sons vying for that advantage. But Satan, or Lucifer's, cry for dominion and power and forcing qualified him for expulsion from God's presence. He wanted the status of godhood before he had a chance to even understand the divine quality of agency. Of course, some of God's spirit children reveled in the idea of existing like a puppet, a guaranteed return to the Father. But God's way is never by force, and Satan took those who supported his campaign, only to exist unembodied among the free agent bodies on earth in continuing and ongoing torment. The way I've come to view it is that once Lucifer became enraged, he could never settle down, never one to forgive, not even capable of compassion. His goal is to make those who chose God's plan as miserable and discontent as he will forever remain. And how does this relate to the goddess in training? Basically, Satan and his despicable followers will do anything, no matter how low, to turn you away from your divine errand. He will pit you, divine daughter, against other divine daughters, introduce shame upon shame in your daily interactions, and beat you down to crawling through life any way he or his conniving minions can manage, turning you away from the light at every opportunity. His rage is never failing, and you are his target. The ploy of his debauchery is to desensitize you to his influence, to convince you it's simply that nasty self-talk constantly tugging at you, that you are your own worst enemy. He persuades you to believe you can never do or be enough, so why even try? When others succeed, you grumble. When you succeed, you downplay. He's had front row seats to who you truly are as a goddess in training, and because he and his followers have eons of time and learning the human condition to their advantage, you truly are outnumbered in so many ways, a millstone of which to never be rid. Take heart, potential goddess. God also has a full-force army of his righteous warriors so much greater in power and might that he enlists in your behalf. You have the capacity to be buoyed up as if on the wings of ministering angels, who pull you from the abyss and resettle you on higher, holier ground. But it is a choice of your making. Which wolf do you feed? The one who drags you unwittingly into his lair, or the one who guides you by the light of the moon into the comforting arms of your protector? Is it so difficult to differentiate between the wolves? Ask yourself these questions as you proceed in life. Is what I am telling myself something my loving God would tell me? Is it useful and helpful to my well-being and progression? Is it something I would tell my child or another beloved relationship in good and hopeful conscience for productive and peaceful growth? If not, beware that it may be a source of the destroyer. And a quick side note. God's way is not by magic. Any who espouse the power of sorcery of many types acts as a source of manipulating God's intentions in a roundabout and deceiving way. Chapter 6. Our Affirmations. Leaving behind the unsightly and malevolent effects of our rival, we now delve into the uplifting, the edifying, and wondrous ways of the assurance, the assertion of what we may become based on the words we daily use. Words are a powerful vibration. A woman may not even understand a single word of a foreign tongue, yet she knows the intent or the spirit behind it. Throughout sacred writ, we witness the power behind the words of the holy prophets, as well as our Lord Jesus Christ, God's only begotten of him and an earthly woman. For where your treasure is, there will your heart be also. I am that I am. I can do all things through Christ which strengtheneth me. Consider the lilies of the field, how they grow and toil not. The very words we use define us and our character. As a goddess in training, the words we use become on par with what is Scripture for us. We are what we speak. How are your words defining you? Do their reverberations amplify the very cells of your body for the better? I once stood in a checkout line at the grocery store behind a man who was upset at the incapable clerk before him. He spewed vindictive words and insults, tumbling one after another as the clerk shrunk further behind her counter. I thanked my lucky stars I hadn't brought my young children on this outing, as everyone in the line silently wished his departure. As my turn arrived, the woman behind me almost apologetically asserted, "You know, I've heard it said that foul mouths lack adequate vocabulary." Those who heard chuckled with her. Men and women like these think they come across as a clever, knowing type, when really they repulse those with true spirit and intellect. It is with concern I note ever-increasing defaming and spewing language from all walks of life. But why should it matter? Aren't others merely practicing their freedom of speech? Well, this much I know. It has become commonplace in even the simplest of children's viewing selections to include the defaming of our very eternal Father, cursing our very power source. People drop God's name without a second thought, not even pausing to understand they broke one of the 10 Commandments to not take the name of the Lord God in vain. Sure, they wouldn't kill or commit adultery, but they hold no qualms with using their very Creator's name with casualness, disrespect, and often even contempt. Dear friend, lift yourself to higher ground and watch the words you use. The Lord Jesus Christ has written our names on the very palms of his marked hands, and we would do well to write his name upon our penitent and contrite hearts. Knowing we've made this word alliance taps us into his power and keeps us in his unending and merciful care. We do well to use words that build, not destroy. Try a little experiment this next week. Notice the words you use and how they affect you. Do you feel good with an uplifted spirit, or do you notice the essence of trash in your space? Take it forward further and repeat positive affirmations about yourself, set on lifting your very being to your goddess potential. and even a step further. Move your body in strengthening ways as you repeat positive self-sentiments, improving even more. It is literally the very least you can do for one who plans on holding such mighty power. Chapter 7. Our Darker Sides. As we continue, I would be remiss to not address what some philosophers refer to as our shadow self. How amazing is it that our God has sent women to this planet with this simple intention, for his daughters to be found worthy of goddesshood. It is really the end result of all we do on a daily, yearly, and lifelong basis. And with that trying time comes the truth that we are not always showing up as all we are cracked up to be. Don't get me wrong. Yes, we have God's seed of divinity planted deep within, but keep in mind that God had his own time of proving to qualify also for his godhood, which means he also had to learn to manage a darker side as well. Which means you will at some point face a great purging. This purging may come as a trial you think you cannot withstand. It may come as a time of being left all alone, much like Christ in the Garden of Eden before his crucifixion. It may come as friends and or lovers betraying you, becoming your worst enemy so that you must surrender to God because he is all that is left. Whatever your trial may be, know that there is purpose behind this breaking of your spirit such that you might experience a sacred awakening. Inasmuch as others may try to coddle or cushion your difficult experience, know that by divine law, you will encounter opposition upon opposition despite any coddling or cushioning. Without the opposition, you simply can't qualify for goddesshood, for she must understand the difficulties those in her progeny will also be required to ultimately face. When the dark reaper comes knocking, you don't hide behind the sofa. You accept his grotesque hand and lift your chin as you step into the awaiting darkness. The less resistance, the easier the lesson. Accept the mission, surrender to the Almighty, and look fear in its very eyes and see that it's not as frightening as we like to believe. Of all the work we do on earth, this may be amongst the most difficult. Learning to understand our most difficult times as integral for our progression. And with that understanding comes the acknowledgement that if you not only welcome but encourage this trial fully, you but pass through it more wondrously than ever could be expected. I call this time the wall. The wall is higher than your capabilities. The wall holds 1,000 emotions behind it crying out to you, but inaccessible. The wall tells you that you absolutely cannot. The wall hides the cure to your suffering while it continues to grow taller and wider and deeper. You cannot scale, dig through, or overcome the wall on your own. This is the beauty of God's mystery behind the wall. When you have learned enough, when you have accepted the charity of those he sends, and when you are positively certain you will never move that drastic wall, it simply turns on its hinge like a secret passageway from the library to the servant's circular staircase that winds to your solution. Chapter 8. The Wall. It is a changed person that transcends the wall. The transcender starts with some brutal self-honesty. Where does ego hide? Ego can stand smartly for edge God out. Why won't ego dare to be wrong, or accept a few stripes, or venture to soften? Attempting to banish ego with a swiping blow only tempts ego back more hideously. I like to think of ego like a stomping toddler who insists you see their preschool artwork when you are deeply engaged with a conversation or task the toddler won't wait for. If you simply acknowledge their grand display before your eyes with a, "My, isn't that nice?" she skips off happily with nary another need. When we see ego for its wanting acknowledgement with minimal attention, but don't let it reign, we begin to unfold our darker side into the light. How else might we deceive ourselves? Our darker side is always the victim, blowing with the fate and unfairness we all face. She lacks accountability and instead wisps in the wind, a reactor, not a creator. Her responses are flippant and often unsavory and unschooled, perhaps all in the name of wit, hiding ignorance or slandering others she unknowingly sees in herself. Instead, the goddess in you grasps what is hers, stays within her own energy, yet is giving to the edge she can give while still keeping herself. She is giving the world the best of her while only sacrificing the less of her, which is enough. Why would a potential goddess do anything less? She is proving herself, not others. If God has given a woman the fabulous gift of artistry and she shortchanges herself for growing tomatoes instead, ultimately burying her talent in the sand by not feeling adequate, she might have missed a wonderful opportunity at helping others see God through her work. Conversely, perhaps another woman is a fantastic tomato grower, manifesting her goddess hand at creating something that enlivens the body and strengthens the soul. I emphasize this point because I think all too often women downplay their gifts and abilities and glide through life without really living how she could in a way that makes herself and everyone else better. Let's continue understanding our self-deception. We must explore the two faces of shame. The first is the perfectionistic woman who believes she is already on the precipice of her life actualization. She believes she can do no wrong. She is more right than everyone else. She is practically a shoe-in to heaven. Why can't others be just like her? Why is everyone else so insufficient? This false actualized woman is deceived by her inner pain. Certainly, you don't see this pain in her perfect appearance or tamed actions, but within the depths of her lying eyes. Don't punish her for the escape route to the top of her mountain being exact obedience, albeit fake, for the suffering she holds deep inside accounts for her maladaptive attempts. Her greatest transgression is the judgment she places on all around her, as well as herself. Hence, she isn't loving God, her neighbor, or self. Undetected to the naked eye, the perfectionistic woman has shamed herself beyond recognition, and her perfect persona is the resultant byproduct. Her shame may masquerade in someone else's actions of which she feels accountable. Her shame likely has little to do with her own choices, which is why her unerring response is so deceptive. This is surprisingly the woman in need of much compassion. Her wall looms higher and more daunting than most, but she expects no mercy, only extreme righteousness, a sparkly report card. Yet her responses belie desperately needed help. She fights single-handedly to remain erect atop her formidable perch. She deceives both herself and those around her, but there is no balm for her bleak outlook. When you behold this woman shining in her beautiful array, know that she is amongst the neediest in your beholding. Now for the other face of shame. We'll call her the opponent, for she fights against her own goddess nature. She is part of the enemy attack against herself, the other being the adversary mentioned a few chapters back. This woman has indeed broken God's laws, but let's be honest, aren't we all sinners? I once heard a man I greatly respect quip, "Give me someone who has sinned and fully repented to go forth to teach God's gospel, and I will take them any day over one who doesn't know repentance." The difference between the opponent and any other title we might give a woman is that she drowns in her inadequacies, which pull her further and further lower. In my experience, this woman is almost in over her head. She tolerates the water up to her ears, with her nose high enough to keep her breath, believing that as long as she is still breathing, she is just fine. When a lifeguard throws her some salvation, she waves him away, believing only she can face her demons. She becomes like a horse with blinders, with only one option: exist. You might view her in life one of two ways: the overdoer, like the perfectionist, to redeem her many failings, or the underdoer who gives up and believes she is without hope, apathetic and indifferent. Others may call her free-spirited, but following the goddess pattern doesn't allow for free spirit. The goddess pattern is comprised partly of high spirit, intention, joy, care, nobility, expansion, and inclusion. But hang on the opponent will, certainly not partaking of all her Heavenly Father would wish for her. Each of these shadow self personas have alternatives. When the woman of apathy finally cares, she becomes the woman of anger. Why has she suffered? Why do others have what she can't? What has she missed out on while deep in the water? And how can she refocus herself to what she was before darkness spilled in? Her numbness mingles with passion as she pulls slowly back into life. When she finally comes into focus with her potential goddess by recognizing her divine nature, she, and all the personas of which we've discussed, realizes she must recalibrate. Paradoxically, the answer to regaining the goddess track is also held by opposites, which I'll explain in the next chapter. Meditation. Amorphia, a story about finding yourself. There once was a blob named Amorphia. Amorphia was a perplexion. People around Amorphia would ask, "What is it?" Amorphia reminded them of a cloud, coming and going, boundaryless, colorless, sometimes dark, sometimes wispy. Amorphia would sometimes sigh, or seem to blush, or laugh raucously. It must be a she. Did they like Amorphia? Did they have an opinion about her? Yes, it was a she. They didn't know what to think of her. In fact, they decided it was just safest to keep their distance from this mystification. When they did get close, she froze, hoping her motionlessness would deem her acceptable enough, or that her wobbly laugh was cool enough. Amorphia couldn't figure what was wrong with her. She hoped to blend in. She hoped to rise above. Sometimes she felt downright discriminated against. Could she help her flighty or stormy weather? She was trying her darndest to fit in, but those dreams would vanish with a simple breeze. Then one day she met a healer. The healer did something peculiar. He took a number 2 pencil and outlined her into the form of a woman with arms and legs, a head and a torso. How new this border felt to Amorphia! It seemed to contain her. As Amorphia walked down the street, people noticed her, and some people smiled at her. She must return to the healer for more. The healer grabbed his colored pencils and added a heart to her middle, a mind to her top, knees to her lower, and a glow to her border. As she departed that evening, she asked the healer what she could do before she came back to him again. He told her to decide what was in her heart, to define the contents of her mind, to bend her knees often, and to recognize the glow around other people's borders. She was ecstatic. This was so different than the amorphous living she'd known for so long. But it wasn't easy. She spent much time and attention at the mountain, feeling her definition and filling in the cracks. Others began talking to her like she had substance. So refreshing. Amorphia felt settled and grounded, her head out of the clouds. Back again to the healer. What would he give her this time? He took his permanent marker and drew a line in front of her like a wall, and gave her 2 pieces of instruction. You must determine who you are and keep it within your side of the line. Then you must decide everything you can possibly freely give without letting it cross your line, and give it to others. She spent the whole next week in the mountain deciding what belonged on each side of the permanent line. These were the phrases that encapsulated her side of the line. This is what I believe. This is what I prefer. I'm sorry, no. If you want it so bad, do it yourself. I can do this, but I can't do this. And what belonged on the people side? I'd be glad to help after I take care of my basic needs. Sure, my cup is full enough that I can freely give you this. I'd be happy to do this for you again, but I'd be happy to receive this from you in return. I don't understand what you're going through, but I'm here for you. I know the healer is giving me enough to share of my abundance. I'd be delighted to share. Thank you. I appreciate your sharing so much. On her last trip to the healer, Amorphia wondered what the healer could possibly give her now. It was simple, and it was enough. With a red sparkly gel pen, he wrote a new name on her name tag, Amour, which is French for love. The opposites of your goddess self. The angel and demon journeys to goddess. Let me explain our opposites by asking a question. If you could label what you despise in yourself as your shadow self you hide from the world, what would she be called in one word? Stubborn? Witchy? Narcissistic? What would you call her? Could you in the same vein actually call her determined, intuitive, self-full? A therapist took me through what he calls ego state therapy to find my opposition and face her head-on. Very much center stage, but invisible for decades, is the part of me I labeled tenacious. She was my determined, sometimes ruthless side, my unregarded, fierce advocate. She defended me at every turn, stood up to the bullies, and insisted that I relax when I needed it, or that I try when I'd given up. She had little patience for my alter ego at that time, tired, but tolerated tired as I unwound from resultant health conditions of pushing myself too hard, trying to be what I am not. Eventually, my polar true opposite emerged softly and unobtrusively from the outer edge of my mind. She was delightful, tender, yet funny. I couldn't believe I actually owned this part of me. The name for her was easy. Grace. I welcomed Grace with open arms, thanking her for her diligent patience, promising to give her more stage time. Her eyes twinkled as her presence flowed softly. I've come to realize she makes up a nice fraction of my goddess, as does Tenacious, to my advantage. So I ask you now, my divine sister, what are your opposites? Can you see good in all of them? But most importantly, can you cease to judge your shadow self as an offender? Can you see the pretty picture she's drawn for you, insisting your praise and accolades? She merely serves you exactly as you need it. You need not shun and disregard her. She is your advocate. So what are your opposites? How will you welcome them all? When will you allow your shadow self to instruct your goddess self to sympathize? Another boon attaches itself to the gift of opposites. When parts of you surface that you'd rather push away, you can always assign a healthier opposite to an otherwise dooming tendency. Let me explain. Opposites aren't good or bad. They are just opposites. Sweet or salty, loud or soft, aerobics or yoga, exuberance or pondering, light or heavy, long or short, bright or dim, choppy or smooth, and on. For example, when I feel I am about to lose it when chaos gets the best of me in the kitchen, unlike my previous self who would push forward despite the challenge and perhaps lash out at my children, I now recognize the need for an opposite. It may be leaving things be as I sit outside in the sun for 20 minutes, or that I twist the situation into comical, such that my kids and I are belly laughing at the mess. Laughing is an excellent resource, especially for the endorphins it welcomes. When you incorporate the tool of opposites into your life, which is really all about a shift in perspectives, you support your goddess self in using all things to her advantage, as a god would naturally perfect, for it blesses others as well. As I like to say, life is not about determining what you are fighting for, it's that you stop trying to fight what you are. Meditation. The prayer of the two sides of me. The prayer of desperation. Dear God, I am suffering. I've fallen into a bottomless pit. Because my position is so low, I know you can raise me up. I'm in a bad state. I don't know if I can make this whole life. Please, oh please, step in at some point. I understand you may want me to suffer because it will grow my character, and I'll hold on. But is it really too much to ask that you intervene sooner than later? What can I do? Can I bargain that I trade some extreme effort for the blessing I so desperately need at this time? Just tell me what I can do. But don't make it too terribly hard, because I'm already at the end of my rope. Please, oh please, oh please. Later. Dear God, I see that you have not yet seen fit to rescue me in my time of trial. So help me be satisfied with my lot. Help me accept mediocrity. I know I only qualify for what I already have, and that shrinking is safety. So I will hang tight, or fall back, whatever is less painful. I will stop whining and wishing for what I may never be able to have. Sincerely, Patience. The prayer of faith. Dear God, thank you for the opportunity that has presented itself to me, and because of this challenge, I know Thou wilt provide me with what I need to proceed, to feel the measure of my creation and shine so that others might see my good works and glorify Thee because of what I experience. Help me to heed the call to be great, full, whole, complete, despite what I presently face. I will stretch myself to the extent possible, trusting Thee to bridge the gap. I understand proceeding in faith not to be pretending, but exhibiting a rare belief that I merge the impossible with Thy forever possibility. I know Thou wilt place in my path those I need, and those who need me. I see that stepping into the dark unknown is but a change in the scenery of the play of which I am the star. When I am settled and reset, I have a quick catch-up for time and effort seemingly lost in what seemed an incubator. I am utterly grateful for what Thou continues to bless me with, and understand when I don't always get what I want. It's because Thou hast greater things in store for me. I appreciate my chance to increase my spiritual capacity and accelerate my potential goddesshood. Lovingly, your daughter. The Lord's Intercessory Prayer. Number 1. Pray out loud. 2. Pray to be kept from evil. 3. Pray to become more like the Lord. Number 4. Pray to be filled with God's love. And 5. Pray for people by name. Luke, chapter 22, verse 32. Chapter 10. Shame on you. Shame is elusive. You may think the concept foreign to you when you actually swim in a hidden lake of shame, unbeknownst to you. It can be difficult to recognize because its very nature is to lurk in the blackness. It makes all kinds of excuses, berates itself for what it's not doing that it should, and casts judgment upon all around, which can't help but nasty up itself. My best indicator of shame is that if I can pre-label what I tell myself with, shame on you, I am in its grip. Shame on you, you should have brought your neighbor a birthday card. Shame on you, the costume you made for your child is so lacking compared to what the other mothers crafted. Shame on you, You hit snooze again. You ate too much sugar. You look like a wreck. As long as shame holds on, you can scarcely recognize it for what it is and how it drags you down. When shame does get the best of you, how can you tackle its menace? How can someone who believes they are helpless and hopeless ever hope to rise above? Their very self-definition keeps them low, beyond help. But God would not have his daughters flounder, famished. That is like saying a baker has no hope for one cupcake among a dozen other stellar cupcakes. It's not how God works. He knows you. He knows your shadow self perfectly, and he loves all parts of you as the truly perfect parent does. What can you tell yourself instead of shame on you? Some replacement thoughts follow. They incorporate the replacement words of must, might, essential, and who cares. This I must do. Follow God's commandments. The rest is just fluff. This I might do. I might choose to sew that dress, or I might choose to donate it to charity for someone it fits better. What is essential I do today? I believe it would be essential for me to take a well-needed nap. Who really cares? If not me, then probably not much of anyone else. If I don't weed the flower bed, the neighborhood Nazi won't be breaking down my door now, will they? I'm not doing it for them now, am I? I have 4 words that shine as a beacon on shame. These 4 words are absolutely key in Goddess Ascension. The sooner you learn them, the higher the vibe you carry, which facilitates your being a more effective instrument in God's hands. Etch these 4 words into the most prominent part of your psyche. Love, gratitude, forgiveness, and self-mercy. When you encapsulate these 4 words into your being, you can't stop their effects from spilling out of your vessel and encircling those in your care with enlightenment and harmony. Let me give you one tip to center yourself into a place of receiving this vital energy of love, gratitude, forgiveness, and self-mercy. Ask yourself, what is the most loving thing I can do for myself right now? And then follow through. It may be to set down what you are doing and meditate. It may be to nourish yourself in a variety of ways. It may be to seek out help from others despite your fear of appearing so inadequate. Love is the strongest essence of the goddess, so we'll return to love later. As for forgiveness, the act of forgiving restores your spiritual capacity. The goddess must maintain a high spirit vibration in order to create, to change things at her will, and to interact with others in a way that lifts them higher too. Forgiveness is of the most difficult tasks we are asked to do in earthly life. It means setting others and yourself free, for as long as we are not the goddess yet, we will still stumble a step back as we regain our footing forward, and we allow this same license in those around us. Yet this doesn't mean being walked all over. Far from it. For trust, companionship, and reconciliation are separate from forgiving. We may mercifully forgive another their trespasses, but keep ourselves out of their influence if so needed. We may redress wrongs to make things right, but we don't need to stick around. And alternately, we may see the forgiven messenger just fulfilling their duty that enables us to access our higher self because of them. God works in mysterious ways, and this includes finding that our greatest enemies may become our greatest allies when we see them for what they are. When we can truly let others go who seem to have offended us, we can truly let ourselves go and allow ourselves mercy and grace that allow for a God force to restore our spirits and increase loving energy. And how does an attitude of gratitude banish shame? Do this little experiment. Think about something for which you beat yourself up for not doing better. Now I want you to take what you have already done with this thing you think needs improving and imbue it with thankfulness in what you have done. Simply indulge your senses and expand your heart in gratitude for what already is. For example, If you wish your children would stop being so lazy in front of the screen because you believe you haven't been raising them well, take a moment to appreciate what they are today, the traits they already magnificently possess, and imagine them before you in their higher self, not doing anything, just being their wonderful potential god or goddesses. Does your heart feel different? Thankfully, you can do this practice with any situation and find your enhanced feelings an innocent byproduct. Gratitude is of the highest energy emotions as it expands perspective, builds on love, and increases things of which you hope to attract for the better. We'll talk about the goddess ability to attract things favorably at a later time. Self-mercy synergizes with love, forgiveness, and gratitude. You can't help but turn the mercy on yourself when you are inviting such high emotions into your being. Shame has no chance against love, forgiveness, gratitude, and self-mercy. But be gentle with yourself. In the years and years it took to establish shame in your mind, it will also take some effort and time to reverse its hold. Consider this formula for improving your self-concept. From Jan Graf, Graf Stress Management. 1. Love yourself. If you don't know how to love yourself, how can you obey the second great commandment to love your neighbor as yourself? 2. Forgive quickly. Forgive aloud, specifically to the person and in the active voice. I forgive so-and-so for this. Process pieces of yourself as you extricate others from your grievances. What am I learning about myself because of this person or people? 3. Love others. Be liberal, specific, and genuine in your compliments to others. You'll find yourself doing the same for you. 4. Choose to be good. Live up to your value standards because you choose to. Use opposites when necessary. 5. Express gratitude. Others help test your goddess prospects by their own inadequacies. You can just be grateful by whoever shows up for you, weak or strong. 6. Be at peace. Repent, forgive, and find what needs to happen to reestablish peace. 7. Give from the heart. Do the right thing for the right reason. A gift from the heart.
Chapter 11. Goddess Calmness. Obtaining the kingdom is a lot of expectations on your shoulder. No biggie, straight and narrow is the way that leads to eternal life, and if you fall off, you're toast. But don't worry too much. As the goddess in training advances through the daily grind of her sojourn, a few things might happen. She might unwittingly absorb chaos the world lends, resulting in anxious thoughts she doesn't know how to transcend. She may heave the burdens of the world on her own shoulders, forgetting the advantage of her dancing between the privileges of heaven and earth at her disposal. She becomes a power unto herself, but doesn't actually hold enough power to keep the influences of fear and presumed inefficiencies at bay. Advancing tumultuous thinking crowds the realistic and possible, and she loses hope. She pushes to actualize her dreams, then pulls back as they derail. She grasps her divine potential, only to crumble when the pushing seems unmanageable. With her cup of overwhelm frequently teetering, it doesn't take much for a simple breeze to blow her moorings back to the familiar, the tepid, aborting aspirations of her tantalizing desires. She feels the leering judgments and lofty expectations of the world around her, and hence herself, and feels utterly incapable. The world becomes her enemy, and heaven unreachable, or worse, not enough. Who is she to try for anything greater than the mediocre? So many in her realm seek to aspire for that for which they already excel. She should just throw in her towel now. When already feeling so impaired, the lightest misstep becomes a mighty stumble, and then the plight of obtaining the kingdom becomes further formidable. If she can't manage the few beans she's been asked to plant, how can it ever grow to a sizable beanstalk to surpass the atmosphere above? What can she do for the goddess calmness she desires? Well, close your eyes if that's comfortable, and think on the following considerations. Meditation for centering your calmness. Now center yourself for a few calming moments. Bring your awareness to a light in the center of your vision. This warm, comforting light softens your shoulders, loosens your neck, and brightens your face with a slight smile. Hold this ideal for several breaths. You've been in a place upsetting to your mind. Your running thoughts have not been serving you well lately. God really doesn't intend for you to suffer so. So what would self-compassion look like in this now calming moment? Would you really ask of yourself all the daunting pressures you've laid out so insidiously in your mind? If you were to advise another with such high self-expectations as yourself, what would you say? And then turn it back on yourself. What sympathy and loving kindness would you offer yourself? What would that look like? How would that feel? Could you lay off the pressures you feel burrowing down on you from others? Could you pull chaotic thoughts like a magnet that draws them out of you and away to inaccessibility? What is it you hope to gain from the pressures you've laid on yourself? Have you truly chosen this thing, or has it chosen you? And you're just going along, maybe to please others more than yourself, or because it's just what people do. The truly essential things have definitely been chosen. So what lies outside the realm of choosing which unassumedly drives you instead? What discomforts could you willingly trade for the thing you want in the end? And what are you willing to provide or drop to have that end result? What happens when you challenge your thoughts with agreement and disagreement? What if it's really so? What if it's not really so? What if it plays out exactly how you think it will? What if it plays out not at all how you think it will? How would these various scenarios play out? Do you understand your purpose in the thing you concern yourself over? How does it define you, or not? Will it matter next week, next year? Will it infinitely make a difference? So is it worth doing now, or not worth doing now? Are there supporters where you actually think there are judges? And can you reach out for their advocacy on your behalf? Have you concocted their false reactions, and they actually stand encouragingly by your side? And those who don't, can you forgive them their trespasses against you? Or contrive how, even if they seem to stand in your way, they are cheering you on solely because you believe it to be so? For remember, often others suffer in ways we can't imagine, and their oppositional reactions to you have nothing to do with you. Do you actually possess the tenacity to do that thing? Or think how you'd like for the desired result, despite your current misgivings? Are you enjoying what you hope to do? Having fun? Feeling grateful and blessed? Do you need a joyful distraction in the interim of the barely tolerable? Are you taking care of your mind and body physicality with helpful meditation practice, good food and supplements, exercise, aiding and disrupting the feedback loops that foster anxiety? Are you inviting the whole, the edifying, the uplifting, and letting all the rest just be? Perhaps just out of your reach for now? Are you calling on a power greater than your own, knowing everything is right on track and according to plan? Do you believe with God first, all other things fall into their proper place or drop out of your life completely? And that you can do all things through Christ which strengtheneth you? That your burdens may be lighter, maybe just for the asking? Do you realize if your concerns are not God's will, you can simply move along and discard the greatest of your distresses? Take these considerations to heart when you feel overburdened. We are that we might have joy, so let it take its rightful place.
Real Goddess, Chapter 12. Love is the answer. Though I fear placing the cart before the horse, I will explain why love is the answer to finding your goddess before I address a woman finding herself again, for they are really interrelated and inseparable. Love is the mixture of joy and sorrow. Think about it. If everything were joyful, there would be no reference for why joy is special. And sorrow carries with it a compassion that draws two bodies together. So when you mix the two, the heart swells much like familiar homesickness expanded by the gratification of that desire. So it goes without saying that how we treat ourselves will be how we treat others. If we speed through life without a consideration of our own joys and sorrows, we also disregard how the connections we form with others become meaningful. And in case it needs repeating, let me remind you that true loving is exemplified first in God's loving us and our returning that love. Love multiplies, never divides. You'll likely agree that we love those with whom we pay more attention. Any mother will tell you her feelings for her offspring outweigh those of a stranger's. I believe our motherly instinct simply makes it so. We are endowed with an exaggerated concern for those in our care because of the ties we share. Could it then be possible that as we seek to truly see, understand, and accept another, we will then more fully also love them? To truly love, then, means to immerse ourselves in the human condition, to forge connections despite our inhibitions, and sacrifice at least a part of ourselves in placing us on the level of those with which we interact, high or low. That attention is freely given without expectation of reward, quite opposite of what so many demand. And as I've already alluded to, loving is to think less about our weaknesses and imperfections, and to think more about loving others for God. The very act is like training wheels that set us up for unconditional loving in our own eventual goddesshood. I also find it interesting that when we are in the condition of fear, we cannot love like we hope to. It seems love slips out of the window and skips the country. When I coincidentally ran upon this scripture, 2 Timothy 1:7, my spirit knew it would rank in high standings amongst my favorites. For God hath not given us the spirit of fear, but of power, and of love, and of a sound mind. Fear and love can't coexist, for perfect love casteth out fear. So wherever fear is, look it in the eyes and see it as a catalyst for your heart's truest desires. What you most fear is what you most revere. The boogeyman under the bed? Perhaps your soul is crying for adventure. Overconcerned that others see you as a fool? You haven't given them reason to regard you otherwise. Step it up. You wonder where the money will come from? As God is the giver of all good gifts and has given us the bounty of the earth, it's simply a cry for more faith. The real goddess knows how to manifest. She is above the world's economics, the judgments of others, and the most formidable of monsters. While the world spins in chaos, she rises above, or finds the calm within, inhabiting the eye of the storm, still and serene in the center. She does this by stepping out of the rat race, by centering her spirit and God's spirit in the same space of understanding, of setting aside the many voices that insist what she should do, and acting on her customized plan sanctioned by God's Spirit. And most importantly, Knowing who is really, really in charge as puny men and women insist the square will fit in the circle spot. That's God who is really, really in charge on this planet, His beloved Earth. With love, there are no victims, just lessons. And as we view life in this perspective, life is a classroom bent on one final exam: loving. The assignments in such a classroom would include never neglecting a prompting to love. We will revisit this idea of this life as a classroom in the next chapter. Ultimately, she infused with love is crowned with the gift of charity, a humble holder of the pure love of Christ. She has become love, the heart, mind, and soul in agreement, with no desire but to do good continually. She watches carefully that her interactions, experiences, and activities only add to her goddess light. Real Goddess, Chapter 13. True Love. I believe 6 steps shed light on how to arrive at true love. The first step: a woman must do whatever it takes to find peace in her life and relationships. Peace is born through faith and hope in the Lord by allowing no other gods before you. The goddess must know where her priorities lie by deciphering them in earth life. Is her priority her occupation? Is it her family? Is it worthy hobbies? She coordinates through prayer and her own good judgment how her priorities will establish a sense of peace in her life. When a woman puts God first, things fall into place or fall out completely. Second, she must institute a healthy self-care program. I can tell you firsthand that if the well is dry, there will be water for no one. She can determine her self-care in a well-rounded way, taking into account her physical, mental, social, emotional, and spiritual investments and interests. When her cup is full, she can fill others. Self-care is self-love. Third, she can seek balance and support. No man or woman is an island. God places others in our life at the moment we need them. Who is in your life right now, and why would they be there? Or who do you need to pray into your life? God blesses us through others, and I believe we each are surrounded by an orchestration of beings on earth and in heaven who combine forces in our specific behalf. Learn to recognize and appreciate them. Like a good friendship does, you really fulfill purposes for one another. Fourth, she must recognize truth. When she recognizes, speaks, and expresses her truth like a personal compass bent on her salvation, she continues to invite further sources of her truth and pure light. You might wonder why truth is a 4th step. This is why. When a woman can find peace, self-care, and support of others, she is finally in a place of enough foundation to recognize, speak, and express her truth without fear and repercussion. She is accountable and courageous for what matters most in her life. 5th is perspective. With a greater panorama, she is more readily available for accessing an expansive view of something greater than herself. She can see what God sees in the eyes of His children. She holds less judgment because of the view, and with a farther reach, she can help bless others in a way that also sustains her. This is a truly symbiotic formula, the mindset of pleasing others and self simultaneously representing a mature and thriving love. And lastly, loving with a full purpose of heart. This woman knows who she is and why she's here, and she works toward that end in a variety of ways, including helping others accomplish the same. She understands her gifts and talents, weaknesses and strengths, and shares them like a candle, the light never dimming one to the next. Her heart is fueled by God's love as it flows candle to candle, and the cycle repeats. I have a neighbor friend who I believe fits this model of true love I've described. Dana is such a bright example to me. In the dozen years we've been acquainted, I have never heard her speak a negative comment about a soul. When she cooks or sews or picks peaches from her tree, she cooks, sews, or picks peaches for others too. I've looked carefully for a grimace of regretting what she does for others, but all I witness is a laugh and sincere compliment towards those in her benefit. I once saw an interaction between her and her husband I'll never forget. Her husband began telling a group of us friends some of the idiosyncrasies of his wife. When the grandkids come, she's like one of the kids. The two of us eat the same meal day after day because she only knows how to cook for a crowd. She doesn't always look this good. You should see her in the morning, were some of his comments. As the group shifted uncomfortably, I noticed myself both repelled and bristling. How could he say these things about her right there? What was she going to come back with? I knew I could come up with some pretty good defenses should my husband say such things about me. All eyes turned on her as we witnessed a marriage miracle. She smiled, cocking her head and lifting her shoulders as she lightly asked, "Who wants dessert?" As a woman becomes love, she has done so because she has asked the Master for her heart to be full of his love. A goddess must insist on nothing short of this necessity to be full of godly love, and it can be earned upon simply asking God for the gift. As she establishes more enlightening thought patterns, here's what she might tell herself. It doesn't matter what people outside me say or do, unless it's useful on God's terms. Whatever is useful continues to build myself. I know I am winning inside me the less I fight outside me. If I present as my best version of myself, it only matters what God and myself thinks of me. I know that on some days I slip, but it doesn't get the best of me. I see each person as a mentor, everyone having something to teach me in this earthly classroom. I take what I need and move onward. If God cares at all what the world thinks of him, he'd give up power, which would never work. God's love always supplies and is the greatest power of the universe. A woman does well adopting the same attitude. I finish this chapter with a question I am always asking myself through daily living, and invite you to ask yourself the same question. What if my only assignment here on earth is to learn to love? Not to make money, not to raise children my way, not to chase after worldly distractions, not simply for fun, not to prove anything to myself or those I think should care, but simply to love. How would you live differently if this were your only homework? To learn to love. Real Goddess, Chapter 14. Accessing the Feminine. Consider this thought. If you exhaust your inner feminine energies without having access to the Mother Source, you find burnout. Do you agree? Have you experienced this piercing of your energy such that you present as shriveled and tangled to the world? As I've mentioned, I found myself residing in some intense masculine accomplishing energy before I realized my feminine nurturing and softness so lacking. When I suggest the feminine-masculine conundrum to some of my friends, they quickly spite it. "Why should we have to wear a dress?" they inquire. "I can work side by side with any man. I'm tough like that." "I'm just a go-getter. I do what I want despite my man." Well, I did these things until my hands were bent and cracky, with gnarled fingernails and skin aged well in advance of 20 years beyond. The dermatologist had no answer for my aged hands, but sent me home with incapable hand creams. When I finally awakened to my hands digging an early grave, I began to see what was happening. I pushed myself to do exactly what my hands didn't ever want to be doing. And then they were showing up in a rebellion to their sore treatment. Clean and simple, my hands were out of alignment with my true self. An interesting note. Being out of alignment with your true self is also the answer to anxiety and depression from which so many women suffer. We've spoken of the wall, accessed and overcome by opposites. And now I introduce the concept of the changed heart. Now don't misunderstand me that only a woman accesses her heart. All must have changed hearts to approach the altar of God in pureness. But let me put out this tidbit that may change your mind. How would you say Jesus Christ interacts with the women in the New Testament? Really think on this. Does he chastise them? Does he belittle them? Does he call them put-downs like snakes and vipers, fools and hypocrites? I haven't read anything but tender kindness to women folk of the Bible. Christ liberated and affirmed women. But you will notice the women that make the pages of the Bible had their huge walls to scale, followed by a change of heart. The woman with the issue of blood, the woman found in adultery, Mary and Martha losing their brother, Mary Magdalene losing her best friend, Jesus, the 10 virgins. He admonishes and compliments them and sends them away better. He doesn't settle for anything less than women being treated like the queen they are. You can expect on your goddess pilgrimage to experience a rebirth, a reordering, a restoration. And it may not look pretty. Restoring something requires a tearing down first, a breaking away that which is unuseful, a disposing of it, acquiring the new, and rebuilding. The final effect? No more desire to do evil, only to do good. As a woman accesses her heart, having once only used the masculine mind approach, she begins to feel inner wisdom and guidance that transcends the logic of the mind. She begins to recognize a merging with the divine feminine once ignored. She feels her inner reservoir revitalizing, recentering, and stabilizing with her true essence. She is able to more accurately express herself because she understands herself beyond the trauma of having lost herself. And maybe because of that. As she unwinds the masculine, she has the faith and autonomy to become a creator in her world. She quiets herself and she stills her mind in order to know that God is God. She removes herself from the trappings of the world in order to feel what is real. Mother Nature becomes her warm friend. The accepting nature of the trees and vegetation and sunshine reminds her of her heavenly parents' gift of divine-made offerings available to every living creature upon the earth. She begins to nurture the femininity of the earth, complemented by the grandiosity of the masculine, the torrential dynamic water forces with the softly flowing rivers, the square-stemmed mint herb to the daintiness of the petunia, the flames of a forest fire to the gentle heat of the morning sun. Earth and sky speak of her true feminine essence in awesome synergy with man. Remarkably, she comes to realize that the heart and the mind must work together to access the soul's answers, and she is adept at both. Whereas she at one time depended on straight intellect, she begins to understand the gift of the gut reaction of instinct, the God-sent spiritual bestowal of inspiration, and the heart voice of intuition. Accessing the mother source allows a woman to refill the depleted. She draws within herself to know with little thought her next step. She reaches out to meld divine with inner design. She liberates her battered, weary soul with grace and ease. She finds empowerment from exemplars touched by the source, residing at the ascended levels of which she aspires. When you find yourself, you fix all relationships. When you open yourself, God can use you in a way that makes you shine. When you become uncontrollable to Satan, you become controllable in a joint plan with God. Meditation. Broken Vase. As most of us have asked ourselves, why does God ever allow us to flounder? Doesn't He love us? Doesn't He hope for our best? Why does He allow our brokenness? Ironically, it's all about brokenness. God doesn't remodel, He rebuilds. He is the master architect, the premier prime contractor, and the ultimate supreme constructor. Brokenness allows this rebuilding. A wild horse must be broken in order to follow its master. We are like these splendid creatures broken so that we can become something stronger and more beautiful than ever before with God at the helm, our master. Now imagine a beautiful vase. You've lovingly acquired and maintained its shine and magnificence. You've kept it in a safe corner and smile as you see your reflection in it while passing. So you can't fathom how it possibly could have enticed your young son's baseball into its hallowed space. And crack! The beloved object lies in pieces on the marble floor. Your eyes meet with those of your son's, and you wonder if you should shriek, cry, or melt into the ground. Before your son can guess your possible flurried response, he bends to gather the pieces as he promises retribution. You gather your wits about you as you think to caution him against cuts. You wilt a little as he soon asks you the whereabouts of your glitter glue, but you wisely distract yourself elsewhere as you mourn your vase's demise. Later that day, you pass the corner as you notice a lovely mosaic with pieces puzzled together, creating a dazzling array that once was your vase, strangely more dull. That vase becomes more precious to you than ever before as it shines in its sparkling attempt at your son's penitence. You love it even more because it carries your son's affectionate signature. Can God actually take the broken pieces of you and create a glittering masterpiece? Can God actually take the broken pieces of you to create a glittering masterpiece? Yes, He can, and He does. He knows you perfectly, and knows exactly the components of your becoming a brilliant work of art, glitter and all. We can actually hasten this level of brilliance by willingly yielding our broken hearts to God. You simply can't do it alone if you want His signature on His promised returned blessings. We will experience a sanctifying power of the Holy Ghost, which will fill you with peace of conscience and the joy of reconciliation with God. In a wondrous union of divine attributes, the same God who teaches us to walk with a broken heart invites us to rejoice and be of good cheer. From Bruce Porter, A Broken Heart and Contrite Spirit. Leonard Cohen said, "Ring the bells that still can ring. Forget your perfect offering. There is a crack in everything. That's how the light gets in." From Anthem. That's how God's light rebuilds, through the cracks. The patching and healing of our personal vessel is the power of God's love. His love is the mortar, and Christ's redemption the bonding that creates everlasting healing. Quote, much like Michelangelo, who painted thousands of details on the ceiling of the Sistine Chapel, our Heavenly Father has embedded innumerable divine details in our DNA that compose a stunning picture of who we really are. Unquote. By Hannah de Tavis. A broken you creates an incredible opportunity to truly find those innumerable divine details that create that stunning picture of yourself, perhaps for the very first time. So, break away. Real Goddess, Chapter 15. Finding Self. Finding self requires a letting go and an adding to. With a huge dose of self-compassion, the goddess in training learns to let go, to really surrender what is not hers. She becomes unapologetic about kindly expressing her opinions. She sets needed boundaries. She can say no, and she recognizes resentment meaning something needs to change. She masters her thoughts to be oriented with God's source, and she finds passion in her daily interactions. The redefined woman begins to identify the things in this life that strengthen or deplete her, what sacrifice is really worth the sacrifice, and which excuses to call excuses. She learns to spend energy intentionally, to trust herself without being overly self-reliant. She allows herself days off and times she sets aside for what needs doing. Furthermore, she understands the much-needed rest in a variety of segments of life: physical rest, emotional rest, mental rest, relational rest, financial rest, creative rest, social rest, spiritual rest, and more. Reciprocally, she institutes restorative practices to each of these categories as well. For example, if she has overinvested herself in a demanding relationship, she may need a much-needed hiatus. And the very answer may be to seek out someone who pulls imagination and excitement back into that spot. or to build herself sacred solitude places for rejuvenation if she finds that's what she requires. And she releases beliefs and patterns that no longer serve her. Grudges, favoring forgiving instead, even if from a distance. Embarrassment and shame. The grip of money, instead replacing it with a flow, a currency. Hanging onto responsibilities that overburden, embracing instead delegation. Looking too far into the future. Cultural assumptions and threats, and information media overload to avoid. An external locus of control, choosing to focus on inner happiness. She simplifies, downsizes, and declutters, which really matches the condition of her mind. She understands personalities more and how they affect others' tendencies, and how not to judge her personalities against theirs. What is one woman's bliss may be another's albatross, and she sees it for what it is. I once served for years as the Cub Master in the Boy Scouts of America program in my area. The Cub Masters would meet together at a roundtable meeting each month, where we planned for our future activities and award ceremonies and shared ideas. It seemed one of the ladies in that meeting always had something fabulous planned for each month. A circus, a carnival, an Olympics, and nothing seemed too difficult for her. She also had a family of 7 children, of which she homeschooled. I felt so ashamed I couldn't be in her fantastic league. When I finally realized she lived in a category of a personality that must always be on the go to feel settled, I firmly entrenched myself with satisfaction in the category that keeps it simple and keeps it fun, which worked just right for my group of boys. We played chair soccer, line tag, and hit the monkey with the Nerf gun. The redefined woman adds these things to her life. The practice of assessing priorities and available energy often, repentance and reconciliation, a sense of safety, eating well intuitively and enough, needed nutritional supplementation such as vitamin D or vibrant sun energy, healthier thoughts, spiritual recalibration including reading scripture that buoys her spirit, celebrating the good from past efforts, learning to push herself in healthy and uplifting ways, empathy and subtle energy balance, managing and encouraging emotions with authenticity at the core, professional mental and emotional help as needed, staying fit and energized through exercise and oxygenation, yoga, tai chi, and other centering activities, doing things for others that elicit from her a heck yes, line upon line living which brings to pass the great, keeping on course with her personal mission, determining what is truly Christ-like. As she finds herself, she begins implementing the arts in her life, dancing, singing, painting, crafting, compiling, whatever suits her fancy. She welcomes new skills, hobbies, and creating. She expresses herself in word, writing, music, whatever speaks to her soul. She improves relationships around her, connecting with others and stepping up as a graceful leader. She becomes more adventurous. Her perspectives branch out such that she institutes a rare balancing act of honoring family, work, hobbies, leisure, self-care, serving, and relationships, with God at the center. She finds that as she can accept herself in the now in this multi-balanced approach, she can always accept what is happening now, and knows that God always loves her in the now, and that her now is her greatest treasure. These lists I've suggested can seem overwhelming, but let me assure you they are suggested with one end goal in mind, to lift you exactly to where God would have you on this life journey. And really, when implemented thoughtfully, life becomes much more simple, more concentrated, and more uniquely and mercifully you. And as my daughter likes to say, be yourself. Everyone else is already taken. Meditation. The Butterfly. Think of the story of Alice in Wonderland. Alice is a simple girl with a big mind. She meets many friends and creatures on her journey to her ultimate duel against the vicious Jabberwocky dragon. One of her caterpillar friends, the wise Absalom, advises her along the way, encouraging her to remember who she really is. Creatures she didn't recognize certainly recognize her, though they say she isn't fully yet herself, the real Alice. As her friend the Mad Hatter insists, Alice wasn't the mostest Alice until her tenacity finally appeared. The things she most feared became her greatest assets. Though at first she has no desire to face her dragon, as the story unfolds, she realizes she is the captain of her dream, and she can use whatever resources or characters she needs to her advantage. She faces and defeats her Jabberwocky. Her dear Absalom caterpillar friend disappears into the numbness of his enveloped cocoon as he grows into a beautiful butterfly with wings for action, beauty, and shine. His wisdom takes new flight with more ground to cover than ever before, and Alice figuratively spreads her wings and flies to new heights as she conquers fears and attracts what she desires. So I want you to now envision your life cushioned by your own comfortable cocoon. Let's say your cocoon sits at the base of your spine, the area of the tailbone. The spine is your lifeline and is energetically mapped with all the organs and systems of your body. So it follows that the emerging you would travel up the spine as it gathers strength and resilience. As your morphine caterpillar climbs higher, it begins to break out of its bindings. It pulls its wings out such that they now cover your shoulder blades. Like the warmth of a cozy purple-gold blanket, the wings enshroud your shoulders and wrap around your front, melding together at your sternum as would a cloak. It continues its amorphosis, ascending up your bodice until it blends together the front and back at the neck to create a tall collar of sorts. You now realize you wear the royal robe of a queen. Your butterfly wings flutter with first-time appraisal as they reach out wide and far. There is no going back now. Your cocoon will no longer hold your eminence. You can only aspire to greater levels now. So ask yourself, where does this place you in the race for your dreams? You can no longer hunker down without the wings getting in the way or getting stepped upon. You can choose to remain in the flower garden, flitting from one perch to another. Or you can do as the great monarchs, spanning one country to the next as they seek their highest aspirations. You can choose to spread your wings and shine, to travel distances only once a wish. And the Lord of your existence sanctions your heightened flourishing. When your Alice opens, how will you respond? What the caterpillar calls the end of the world, the master calls the butterfly. Real Goddess, Chapter 16.
Christ outside the church building. Our gracious heavenly parents sent their Son, Jesus Christ, to the world to live among humankind, teach us his law, and enable us to return to heavenly existence. So, I attend weekly church services to strengthen these bonds between Holy Parents and Son and myself. At one time, my husband was in church leadership, requiring him to sit at the head of the chapel, while I kept my 4 little ones, including a newborn baby, at bay. All it took was a piercing, weighted eye at a fussing child for them to know to not move or speak a peep. Perhaps my strictness overwhelmed them, but to me, I was merely surviving that worship hour. As I've heard other young mothers quibble about keeping their families quiet at such communion, they ask, "Why do I even attend?" I seem to receive nothing from my devotion, and wonder the same of my restless children. To which I finally realized one day, I don't go to church necessarily to strengthen these heavenly bonds as I supposed. I can strengthen my personal relationship with Jesus Christ deeply away from the halls of my church. When I enter my church building, I am initially greeted by a painting of my Savior in the lobby. But my Savior is not a picture along the walls with his hands stretched out to me. He is with me by my side in the hardest times when I am not in the church building. Church culture tells you to be a friend to everyone, to smile at everyone, to be a member missionary, to be valuable. But Christ understands the me that likes to retreat to the mountains to be alone, and to not befriend everyone, and that I can be okay if I didn't take the proselytizing opportunity that I could have. My Christ would not care if people showed up slovenly to church in jeans, if they smoke or binge eat or have somewhat despicable habits. They're still fully acceptable and struggling like the rest of us. My Christ does not have an open house, open to everyone, anyone's invited, which becomes ultimately burdensome to the event thrower. He is a huge proponent of simplicity, like sitting on the rocks by the seashore, sharing beatitudes and providing miraculous sustenance as needed. Gone with the fluff, gone with the overwhelm. At times one might feel judged or judgmental at church, shameful at church, like you can never be enough at church, but you can definitely be enough anywhere else you truly have Christ in your life, no matter where it is. Christ was not necessarily one who follows rules subordinate to that of his maker, such as that of the Sanhedrin. Sometimes he lived an outright rule breaker, healing on the Sabbath, touching the unclean, talking with any class or gender, eating with sinners, and acting bodacious enough to forgive others for their sinning, breaking the current laws to showcase a higher law, knowing that love transcends laws. So to go to church in order to do everything exactly perfectly right is not really my Christ. My Christ is okay when I'm not a little better every day, when I'm not doing it all right, when I am anxious or feeling scandalized, when I am not living the ideal life, making mistakes, making mountains of molehills. He's comforting, understanding, lighthearted, and at my side as a best friend. My Christ lets people laugh at church when they want to, even boisterously, and you're not expected to calm that laugh and quiet your emotions to be more appropriate. If you want to laugh jubilantly, or sing at the top of your lungs, or make an incorrect or borderline comment, you are fully able and acceptable to say or do that thing. Unconditionally loving means you do everything exactly wrong, and he still perfectly loves you. And that's how I want to translate my love to other people, within or without the church. I think of family reunions of my youth, where we felt loved and accepted by everyone around, even if you are the individual people normally might frown upon. You are still given a warm embrace by your favorite aunt, the bless you eye by grandmother, the come tell us what you're up to and none of it will be stupid or inadequate conversations with older cousins. I can sit at church like a slob with my feet up, head back, and hands dangling, and I am still perfectly acceptable and wonderful in the presence of Christ. They say if he knocked on your door and unexpectedly came into your house and saw everything as it was, would you be satisfied by what he beholds? My Christ would be satisfied, messes and all, the hymn book wedged unceremoniously amongst my children's Pirates of the Caribbean sheet music. Jesus Christ is the feeling of nature, 100% accepting, very little planning, and being refreshed and renewed in an outdoor setting. My kind of Christ-like perfect Sunday school lesson is outside the church house, on the lawn, or in the mountains. Would I think different thoughts if he were around? Probably not, because my Christ would totally be all right with anything I thought or said. As long as it wasn't denying him, which I'm not about to, because why would I deny my real Christ right there next to me? My remembering him means my thoughts already revolve around him, his example, and his goodness. So my thoughts would remain the same. There is no day of return glory to anticipate. He's always already been right by my side. When they say he has been through all my pain and worse, he is okay with me not believing it's possible for him to withstand every earthly pain, even childbirth. That it's an incomprehensible and an eternal boggling concept that he could take all that pain and suffering. And he gets that about me, that I can't quite wrap my mind around his capability to endure such intensity. The oft-quoted, "I never said it would be easy, I only said it would be worth it," was not said by Christ. So I'll stop hinging my life on pop culture sayings such as this. Now, don't get me wrong. You will still find me religiously at church every week, but it won't be thinking about the Savior perfectly during the sacrament, or saying just the right thing with the perfectly right smile to the person passing in the hallway. But you will find me in the halls and meeting places of the church because I love Christ and have a personal relationship with him that draws me to the edifice where his foundational truth is found. And that's why I will show up every week, because of my Christ. And because of my eventual goddess who sees the end from the beginning. She even sees beyond the end. If my eventual goddess self could see to my eternal reward, she would determine that the reward is more amazing than I can imagine with my finite brain. The rules and traditions I thought I lived by were mere child's play, and that the basic church life really keeps me on the straight and narrow, but it doesn't contain my testimony of my Christ. My discipleship to my true Christ is the deciding and determining factor of my culmination at eternal bliss. In the end, she will be on par, on level with Christ, though there will probably always be a degree of awe at his sacrifice so my goddess self could make it. And I will have learned through my centering on Christ how to have a personal, perfect relationship with my eventual spirit children, born through perfect love, these children of whom will ultimately call me blessed.
Real Goddess, Chapter 17. Perfectly Godly Love. Look into that resplendent future where with a flick of your goddess hand, mountains move without a thought. You've borne your own spiritual posterity, spirit children with their own chance at also eventually earning what you've obtained. Then ask yourself this question. Why would a goddess desire to place herself in a situation where, because of the cardinal gift of agency, her progeny may choose a terrible path of self-destruction, choosing the dark, following the adversary, and displeasing their heavenly parents, you and your hubby, through despicable actions? Just like currently on earth, so many falling off the celestial path. Why would a goddess ever want to be ruling in a condition of such dissatisfaction? Could it be that the gift of agency is worth her posterity's possible recourse? Could it be there's a grace and mercy we can't understand for those who choose poorly? Or that they inherently choose and thus feel better about residing in a lower kingdom, and hence we are happy for them? Could it be that perfectly godly love is greater than any potential dissatisfaction, and that the magnitude of such love overpowers poor choices and ignorance for a greater possibility? I'm betting on one thing. I'd wager to say that our present mortal minds can't even fathom the power of perfectly godly love. In fact, I believe we, as present mortals, would be unable to abide God's light and love in our present state. Think of Moses. God told Moses at the burning bush to remove his shoes, for he stood on holy ground. So we might find ourselves burning from such intense radiance. As you meditate upon perfectly godly love, you'd be wise to consider this truth. God is much more than your earthly father from which you identify father. Your father from which you sprang is just another of God's imperfect children, though our mortal minds have a tendency to associate the two. A separation in the mind occurs to those who truly seek to know the incomparable identity of God as the Father of all fathers. As such, God is the expert on you. He knows exactly how to shepherd you in all your ways, from your light-spiritedness, your moodiness, your fieriness, your reflectiveness, to a host of other characteristics you may wonder if he can shoulder. Should you believe you are hopeless and helpless, understand that God doesn't make no junk. Like a toddler's scribbling could never be spited, neither could his intense value of his creation of you. This valuation makes every difference in the world, for once you know of His regard for His you creation, you recognize your pricelessness and esteem your fellow men and women as also priceless beyond measure. And as a potential goddess, such is your opportunity to emit perfectly godly love as you strive to become His eventual equal. In the end, all that really matters is love. Love is expansive, abundant, resourceful, accepting, detecting, visionary, all-encompassing, and I'm sure many descriptions I'll learn more in this life excursion that inches closer and closer to that final reward of perfectly godly love. Meditation. Be still and know that I am God. Pulling out of the ravages of the war and the brokenness, we approach the still lands. The still lands is the place following the trot of a horse, where smooth gliding takes over. The still lands is the new asphalt after the rumble strip, the baby's nap after colic, the weightlessness after atmosphere has been fought. I read from Psalm 46. Quote, God is our refuge and strength. He dwells in His city, does marvelous things, and says, Be still and know that I am God. God is our refuge and strength, a very present help in trouble. Therefore will not we fear, though the earth be removed, and though the mountains be carried into the midst of the sea, though the waters thereof roar and be troubled, though the mountains shake with the swelling thereof. There is a river, the streams whereof shall make glad the city of God, the holy place of the tabernacles of the Most High. God is in the midst of her. She shall not be moved. God shall help her, and that right early. The Lord of hosts is with us. The God of Jacob is our refuge. Come, behold the works of the Lord, what desolations He hath made in the earth. He maketh wars to cease unto the end of the earth. He breaketh the bow, and cutteth the spear in sunder. He burneth the chariot in the fire. Be still, and know that I am God. I will be exalted among the heathen. I will be exalted in the earth. Unquote. Still, free from noise or turbulence, untroubled, placid, hushed, tranquil, serene, restful repose. Your stillness invites your spirit reigning. With your spirit in the lead, you are naturally in the safe place, the place where only good exists, where what happens is perfectly in line with the outline agreed upon by yourself and God, or even the world and God. Letting God be God means removing yourself from narcissistic suppositions that you can possibly do what God can, with you in your current state. With God, nothing is impossible, but you may unknowingly insert yourself as the thorn that complicates His miracles. Your stillness opens the mind to access God's realm because you've removed the static and dominating you might otherwise lend. With your stillness mastered, He sees you as ready for His guiding hand. You've been emptied of your uncooperative pride. You've learned to sit back and witness His tender mercies. You recognize His hand played out so blatantly in the lives of men and women, obscured from the eyes of those with no desire to see. You've gathered about you the resources and characters He cleverly inserts all around you. Like a child ready for a fireworks show, you sit in the blackness of the dark night. You may have constructed a plan with Him premortally to know how to advance at this point of stillness, but with millions and billions of His spirit children to also direct, He yearns for your customized input. After all, you are you. And despite your underplaying God's abilities for those of us in the classroom of life, assuming you or he may have missed the boat in whatever you believe should be happening that is presently not, realize this wonderful sentiment. God is never in a hurry and never a moment too late. Poem, Yoked in Thy Will. I am enough, until I really need Him. Then I am back to being enough. Then I lean on Him wholeheartedly, until things change for the better. When you hit rock bottom, you realize you've been doing it all alone. You surrender to God, really surrender. He gives your will back to you and asks you to define it. You start to, but it's tough, so you hand it back. He says, you must find out who you are yourself. You gain idea of your identity, so you hand your will back to Him. Then He says, I am blessing you through others. Here they are. You appreciate the support you graciously receive as you redefine yourself with others, until you feel stuck and really work on who you are. You humbly hand your will back to Him, knowing you are written on His heart, and He says, let's do this thing together, equally yoked. You say, I'm in. He says, I am equally invested in you and won't steer you wrong. You say, I'm feeling good about who I am and about who you are. He says, then shoot, what do you want in your God-centeredness? You are clear about what you want, having righteous desires, and He says, is that all? Don't you think I'm good for more? So you set off, right foot, left foot, until He stops you because it's not in His best interest. Or you realize you love this place, and He loves that you love this place, and on you continue together. Few there be that find this yokedness, but He is eager for all His children to share it in His omnipresent way. Real Goddess Chapter 18. Comfort and Growth. I've heard it said, God is not interested in our comfort, only our growth. I tend to disagree, and let me tell you why. God is interested in our comfort, not only our growth. Comfort is the standard by which we want to eventually achieve our godhood state. Comfort is the baseline which helps us know what to seek for in the end. God is very much interested in our comfort, like we care about the comfort of our own children. We feel good and accomplished when we have achieved a level of comfort for our children and ourselves, buying comforting things like beds, good food, sturdy shoes, entertainment, and so forth. In fact, much of what we do is for their and our comfort. We don't solely care that our kids grow. We also want them to seek for a level of what earth and post-earth life will be about, joy and pleasure, which is all about comfort. Ultimately, what we grow towards is helping others also achieve a level of comfort. I don't send my children off for continuing education, leaving this last bit of advice as they drive away in their packed car. I hope you have much growth and certainly avoid comfort. I foresee them with an attitude of loving the comfort of their next journey. I understand they'll have their walls and brokenness to overcome, but I pray for their ease and delight in life. With tongue-in-cheek, I've understood parenthood to be that condition where not only do you pay money and time for your children's progression, but you hope to have even more time and money to leave with them despite what they may never do for you. If you think on the high level of anxiety nowadays, could it be people are pushed too far out of their comfort zones? Whereas life already provides that pushing, can we just ease into our experiences without hoping for growth that is a natural byproduct of life? Comfort is the ideal for which we grow. If you told me, well, as a goddess, you must know that you will be forever straining and will never arrive, so just accept eternal life as continual efforting. I might apply for a ministering angel who has their needs provided for and can go where they please after the workday is done. And do I dare ask this controversial question? Does God send us our struggles and trials? Is He in the conspiracy to disrupt our comfort in behalf of our growth? I truly don't know the direct answer, but I can attest that in my life, my comfort always rises after I've overcome struggles. So is God then happy for me when I am happier after the wrestle? Could He have granted me the happiness without the wrestle? I know a scripture that states, "There is a law irrevocably decreed in heaven before the foundations of this world, upon which all blessings are predicated. And when we obtain any blessing from God, it is by obedience to that law upon which it is predicated." Doctrine and Covenants 1:30, 20-21. So if what we struggle with is in line with obedience to God's law to receive a blessing, whatever happened to attain it is also based on a pre-existing law. In other words, God is bound by laws that bring blessings, after which He has resultant happiness in tandem with us. Hopefully, we reach outside ourselves for all to receive and achieve comfort, whether it be our employees, our neighbors, those in third world countries, and on and on. This charitable mindset indicates a goddess well on her way to her deserved reward. Real Goddess, Chapter 19. The Sacred Body of the Goddess in Training. My dear, sweet 84-year-old neighbor widow likes to get all gussied up. She dons a soft peach sweater, adds her sparkling earrings, and applies hot pink lipstick. She goes for an outing in the afternoon comprising of a stroll around the cul-de-sac, often stopping to sit in her walker to catch her breath, but not for long as her allergy to the sun chases her soon back into her house. When I notice she's taken that adventurous step outside with her lapdog in tow, I am one of the many neighbors who come out to chat with her and catch up on the latest of her physical maladies. I inwardly smile as I notice she's all gussied up for the event, but I can't help ask myself, at what point do you give up on attempting to improve your appearances when age's ravages begin to swamp you? When do you finally decide, no more earrings, they may actually be detracting from my inward beauty? And when does practicality overwhelm fashion sense? I hear some of you insisting, you wear it as long as you have breath and muscle to continue applying it. That's the joy of pride in a woman's unending beauty. But I've caught myself more than once saying, I really don't think all the accoutrements of loveliness are worth the effort. This coming from a once-upon-a-time teenage girl who had exactly matching shoes for every outfit, and no outfit could be worn more than once a month. Yes, I kept a record, and yes, I had many shoes. We hear so much about a woman's body image, from how her outer presentation mirrors her inner commitment, to how it only matters what is in the heart, nothing else. We hear so much about an overweight population who contend that if they could only lose 20 pounds, they would be on top of the world. I happen to have the genetics of the underweight, somewhat rare in today's population. I have never had to worry about weight. So not until I began detecting wrinkles did I have to stop and decipher how I could proceed happily while losing my younger beauty. Let me tell you this much. There has never been a time where I didn't find something lacking in my appearance before wrinkling arrived. This little pudge of my belly will never leave. I notice a new mole on my cheek. I wish my chicken legs had more fullness like some of the lucky ladies. So as I've melted into my 5th decade of living, I've had to decide a few things. 1. I've thought entirely too much about myself. I've come to understand that people outside ourselves think a whole lot less about us than we believe they do. When you consider others in curiosity and awe, discovering their stories and their drive, appearance begins to make so much less of a difference, and no matter their outward display, their beauty truly shines outward. Mind you, we all know others who look ravishing to the world who are ugly and empty within, which quickly spreads outward in others' unfavorable discernment regarding them, despite their outward appearance. 2. When you are a good receiver of favorable things in your life, attempting to also give to others freely what you would accept yourself, you find the sweet spot of satisfying nourishment and proper physical growth. Overweight people let go of what is no longer serving them, and underweight learn to value themselves for exactly how they show up. A good receiver doesn't need to binge or compensate. 3. Shame attaches to us much more insidiously than we like to believe in body image. When we see the epitome of a perfect body on the screen and we envy that ideal, we are really shaming ourselves for who we are. Would the God who created us agree that there's an ideal to which he should have created us and didn't? Will shame improve our bad habits and unhealthy choices? Lest you don't know this answer, let me remind you that shame's role is to dig you deeper into a darker pit. There is a measure of healthy guilt that inspires us, but it must also be met with a realistic idea of why we really want to be healthy. Is it to be playful with the children or grandchildren? Is it to meet the goal of a speedy 5K race just to say we could do it? Is it to glorify God's creation of our body by treating it well and hence teaching others the same? On the same account, do we gussy ourselves up as gratitude for the body God has given us? I know that when I receive a gift, the more fancy it is presented to me, the more valuably I regard it. If you toss me a pair of new black socks as a gift, I'll think of where it might fit in my sock drawer. If you hand me one of those gold boxes that open like a book, only to reveal through a clear window that fabulous new pair of black socks tucked snugly within, I'll be counting the days to when I can wear them next, and not just on any day, a special day. I also know that when I spend decent effort on my outward appearance, I seem to carry myself more confidently and have a better day than the days I push sloppily through. A wise man once said, "Even a barn looks better painted up." Again, there is a balance of keeping a well-kept presentation with allowing inward beauty to shine. If you study how to maintain a healthy body and physical vibrancy like you study religious scripture and spiritual wellness, you will have a regular reminder of how to proceed with a healthy and vibrant self-image. If you daily read your scriptures, your goddess training manual, to increase your spirituality, how would your diet improve if you read about healthy eating and effective exercise on a daily basis as well? I promise you it improves everything with your body as you create new mental habits based on repetition of good and helpful information. When you revere yourself as the sacred body it is, it can't help but function in God form. And I must share a question I love to ask myself every now and then. How am I okay with my inner geek as a goddess? Laugh if you will, but don't we all have an inner geek somewhere that wonders if it's intrinsically acceptable? I believe this will be one of the best parts of heaven. We can geek out all we want in however that shows up, and we'll still be the coolest goddess ever. Because it's our domain. Out of the closet, out of the judgments of those who sadly couldn't make it to goddess, singing disco at the top of our lungs. Meditation. Body image of a goddess in training. Wherever you are sitting, standing, lying, or moving, I want you to stop and behold. Behold what you are. Look down. Do you see the miracle? Do you see the body that so perfectly complements your mind, your spirit, your heart? your soul. Can you feel its vigor, its strength, its perfect representation of you? Can you envision how marvelously your body works for you? Can you sense how ideally it fits your space and functions so smoothly and matches all those delightful descriptive words that seem to also match the very delightful essence of you? Can you appreciate your apparel and embellishments that harmonize all of you together to suit you just right? You have the freedom of creativity to adorn your body however it may be you choose. Now think on this. Can you consider your appearance as a salutation and representation of your very Creator, of whom you are patterned after in your own very particular mold? When you ponder on your heritage of heavenly parentage, does it cause you to stand with upright posture, raised countenance, and fire in your heart? Do your enlightened eyes showcase your wonderful window to your wonderful soul? Can you see that no matter how many sets of 20 extra pounds you carry, you are still standing up and standing out with boldness, because that is what heavenly offspring does? That no matter your possible hiccup in your appearance, the core of who you are overshadows it all, until all you have left is the mark of divinity? Could you conceivably relinquish control of how you view your representation of yourself to the world, instead to God? And how would that exhibit? Would you let your natural hair color shine? Would you spend more time in caring for others than spending money on new outfits for yourself? Would you welcome each new wrinkle as a badge of honor? With each new passing year, could you let go of outer expectations and instead expect increased inner insights? Could you allow an equilibrium of loveliness despite attrition and concern over how you respect what's been handed you shine in symmetry? What do you enjoy somatically with the physical gift of a body free to act at will? We are finally here on earth where we can move and wiggle and eat and recreate and pleasure, only to be had again past mortality at the glorious day of resurrection. We reside as spirits again until that eminent event. What a blessing is the connection of our mind, spirit, and body in this earthly sphere. True beauty found in any person is God's spark and breath pulsing through them in refined purity.
Real Goddess, Chapter 20, The Metaphysical. And now to one of my most favorite topics, the metaphysical mind-spirit-body connection each child of God shares. So we started first as intelligences, existing on that forever string into the primordial realm with the capability of a mind to think and choose.
Our heavenly parents then birthed millions and more spirit children to encompass each mind, knowing their spirit children who chose to would experience mortality and the accompanying test to return to them, qualifying for life eternal after the physical death. And here we are, in the physical spiritual experience. Having laid out the progression of our development through time, you see that we began with the mind, which includes mentality and emotionality, gained our spirit, or spirituality, our heart, then were birthed as a body, our physicality. Could it be, then, that following that same progression, mind, spirit, body, that the mind and spirit have more sway in our physicality than we give them credit? I am suggesting that our physical condition resides first in the mind and spirit, heart. The world in which I reside is surrounded by medical influence. Cut, poison, and burn away your problems. I hear from commercials, always consult with your doctor first. If I want to begin my couch to 5K regimen, I can't begin that first jog until I have my doctor's okay. I can't lift my finger without my doctor's okay. Absurd. What if we were cautioned to first have our spirits okay? That we clued into our intuition to find our spirit's message as to why the physical imbalance is showing up? That we tap into our mind emotions to see what they are manifesting physically as a signal for needed reform somewhere in our life? Let me give you an example of how I've seen this. I once visited with a friend, Kathy, who complained of intense neck pain. She explained that 2 nights previous, she'd had to call an ambulance to take her to the hospital because she couldn't handle the unexplained pain in her neck. I took a gamble as I stuck my neck out and asked, "That night the pain started, can you think of how you may have felt inflexible and put upon by others in a way you didn't agree?" No surprise to me, she responded, "Well, yes, I had a large disagreement with my mother-in-law that evening. I was ruminating on it during the time that my neck began its throbbing." In other words, her mother-in-law was a pain in the neck that evening. I briefly explained to her how our emotions can quickly affect our body, and she had no qualms with agreeing. The metaphysical connection may easily be seen as butterflies in the stomach when someone is nervous, a headache when overwhelmed, shortness of breath when frightened. You get the picture. So why would other physical signs not show up more deeply or chronically with an altered mindset disparity? Yes, I am suggesting diseases like multiple sclerosis, heart disease, and even cancer have their origins in the uncentered mind and spirit, which creates debate within the body. I'll give you a personal example. I have suffered with teeth grinding while sleeping much of my adult life. When I asked the dentist why I grind my teeth, he answered, "Because of stress." I assured him I was on the low end of stress and felt no relief in his answer. He constructed a splint for me to hold between my teeth while I slept, and sent me along to try it out. Well, my teeth didn't like the impediment to their natural coming together, and that night I ground my jaw muscles to dysfunction. I suffered 6 weeks of blended soup and herbal teas as my diet, while I tried to figure out how to open my mouth again. Yes, some who tire of my talking must have been delighted I was out of commission in that area. I prayed, I moved inward, and calmed my concern I'd never eat normally again, searching ardently for my body's message to me in this jaw conundrum. One night I quietly sat on my bathroom counter as I patiently reasoned with my jaw. Why won't you open? What are you not open to? What will it take for us to regain your functionality? The quiet answer emerged. Be more open to others. My answer, what? That's it? Open myself more to others? I immediately could open my teeth to fit 2 finger widths within, and felt a slackening that would allow my new eating range. I admit I had been a closed person who didn't want to bother or depend on anyone else, and I could recognize my body's cry to be blessed by the companionship of those around me eager to befriend me and be there for me. To say my jaw dropped at this realization is an understatement. Fortunately, my jaw worked as if on new hinges from thereafter to allow my eating a tall hamburger, and I began my ascent to friendliness with those in the world around me. What better way can your spirit and mind communicate with you than through discomfort of the body? And your body knows this. As you let go of the past and see more clearly into the future while reveling in the present, your spirit can impart what is correct for you. My favorite resources for mind, spirit, body healing are the books Your Body's Telling You, Love Yourself, the most complete book on metaphysical causes of illnesses and disease by Lise Bourbeau, and The Healing Questions Guide, Relevant Questions to Ask the Mind to Activate Healing in the Body by Wendy J. Jensen. Meditation. Mind, Spirit, Body Connection. The following meditation assumes you have a physical inconsistency somewhere at the moment. Remember to breathe deeply during this meditation to keep relaxed and extra oxygenated. You've got a problem. Somewhere in or on your body, it hurts, itches, or is otherwise disturbing you. Your mind and spirit is drawing attention to something amiss in your body. So turn inward to the mind and spirit and listen. As you listen, notice the annoyance, the frustration, the peevish feeling of why your body disturbs you so. Have you unknowingly been chastising this body part for not functioning like normal, like it should, or like everyone else's does? Issue an apology to this body part for being at odds with it, when it really has only been the messenger. Now that you are in a neutral place mentality, think on the issue with curiosity on the matter at hand. Your body may have been working with much time and pain or itch or other disturbance to gather your attention finally and appropriately. So at this very moment, sincerely thank it for the hard work it continually performs in your behalf. Your body is always only working in your best interest, no matter the gravity of the health situation. As you probe deeper into your mind, remember to not question or deny what arises. It may seem contrary to what you think you believe. It may be much too superficial to be the answer to something causing such great annoyance, or the thing that comes to mind may have happened much too long ago to really be bothering you now. Accept what comes and go with it with pure faith and truth. As you think with curiosity on the matter at hand, what could possibly be the good in this physical disturbance? How is it benefiting you? Be careful with the conscious answer here that says, "This is never benefiting me. I never ask for this." Instead, seek to go deeper in the subconscious to the true answer. Ask, what is this body part trying to say? If it could speak to me, what are the words it speaks? Interestingly, you may experience an actual conversation from the conscious to the subconscious mind. Go with it, taking note of the innocence of the answers from the subconscious, which never lies. Think on this. When did this problem first appear? And what was happening around it? What comes to mind when you think of that time? Can you establish a link in your thoughts and the problem at hand? Next, ask, Where is my ego interfering and my pride stopping my body from working well? If the answer benefits you by swaying someone else's opinion of you, recognize ego in its very track. With hand on heart, say out loud, I forgive myself for caring too much about things outside me. I promise to do better. I vow to be my full self as I am, loving every bit of me with full purpose of heart. You may need to consider timeline. Where am I ruminating in the past, and what can't I let go of? Or, what am I anxious about in the future that feels beyond my control? What happens if I take off all the pressure? What does my mind accept or reject about that situation? And ask, what would I be able to do if this weren't a problem? And why would that be good that I couldn't? Again, the answer may be surprising. You may come to realize something you love is something your subconscious is warning you against. But it's likely a component or subtopic of that thing you love where the inconsistency arises. So, if needed, break it down. Is there someone or something in this experience that I could fire or replace? Is there a part that makes this person or thing unacceptable that I could reconfigure? What would make me okay with this situation? Where can I find true peace? If needed, even eradicate the thought of the upcoming concern as if it had no bearing on your future, and see if your physical self renews in a timely way. Now ask, if this doesn't resolve itself very soon, am I willing to accept my body's message and collude with its game? Can I have the patience and devotion in the meanwhile to work this out peacefully? This acceptance alone may be the answer to your physical wake-up call. As you delve into the mind, spirit, body questions to get to the root of your issue, I'd like to clue you into a variety of ways of getting your intellect to rest long enough for your spirit and emotions to surface. You may try non-dominant handwriting. Write the question of your malady with your dominant hand, then answer with your non-dominant hand, and see what comes up. Emotional freedom technique, EFT. Some call it tapping. Look it up. Scrambling. Writing your stream of thoughts about the problem, then reading each thought out of order until your mind draws new, healthier conclusions. Journaling. Writing daily about it 4 days in a row, 15 minutes each time. Whatever we pull out of the subconscious never goes back in the same. The 7-minute walk. Walking 7 minutes thinking on the bad of your issue, then turning around and walking 7 minutes back thinking on the good of it, and see what comes up. Oils. High vibration essential oils like rose are a great way to access the spirit and its messages. I almost forgot an important piece as it is already so ingrained in my thinking, and hopefully it is for you too. Remember the meditation of the prayer of desperation versus the prayer of faith? In this whole process, as God is omniscient in every way in your behalf, He, of course, knows the answer to your struggle. His spirit can communicate highly efficiently with your spirit. When your spirit is in line with this receiving through a pure vibe by your obedience and keeping in tune, you can receive the answer to any question you desire, including what your mind and spirit is communicating to your body. We all know a variety of unseen radio, Wi-Fi, and other waves that pulse through the air around us. Once we tap into or tune into those waves, we can receive the signal. The signal is always there. We are the amplifier, that once on the correct station or connection, we receive information flawlessly. Remember that God is only a prayer away, and the signal is always pulsating around you. And finally, the very most important part of the mind-spirit-body experience. The most effective way I know to naturally eradicate pain and discomfort is to issue continual, grateful, loving kindness to that body part. Tell yourself with genuine feeling, I love that this body part is feeling or reacting this way. I love this body part with all the feeling of my heart. And I love and accept myself deeply. No cheating. You must mean it for the subconscious to accept it. So continue to work on self-love and forgiveness if needed. But it will still work very well. As love is the answer to everything, you cannot go wrong with issuing unconditional love to yourself. I know many people who have healed themselves completely with grateful, loving kindness, and I have found it to work wonders on myself. Repeat this meditation often whenever physical discomfort arises, and you will experience the mind, spirit, body miracles God intends for you to learn and pass on as a goddess in training.
Chapter 21.
Grounding. I had never heard of the concept of grounding. To me, grounding was something that happened to naughty children who'd breached their parents' rules. Or more technically, grounding was something an electrician dealt with in the wiring of an electrical current. And in a way, that's very accurate. Except it's your body we are attempting to meet firmly with the benefit of the ground beneath as we release excessive electricity that can accumulate in the body. Let me explain what I found grounding to mean to me and how it might benefit you. When we came here to Earth to get our bodies, our separation from our Maker requires faith, and existing in the world but not of the world. In our understandable homesickness for our heavenly home, some of us may find ourselves overemphasizing the spiritual, always reaching for heaven, always praying and seeking a spiritual high. And in so doing, we neglect to notice the purpose of Earth. When we ground with the earth and realize its importance, coupled with our reaching for heavenly immortal things, we find the balance of heaven and earth. We find we can enjoy and connect the beauties and evidence of God's creations and its universal conscience with God's omniscient knowing. How does a person know they survive ungrounded? If you can't feel satisfaction in the future or past, if you feel you do nothing productive despite your efforting, if you believe you have little meaning, that is a lack of grounding. It's feeling aimless and empty with your time and energy. If you could just do more. It shows up physically as headaches, indigestion, sleep problems, any physical symptom that may be an effect of your spirit literally rising too intensely. Remember, you are not a goddess yet. Some of your actions may present as follows. You keep yourself overly busy. Your physical actions of movement serve as an attempt to keep the body in a more grounded state. Groundedness establishes solidity. You notice you feel much better after exercising and dancing and sporting. Your body gains connection with the earth with each pounding of the foot. You may feel enlivened after a session of gardening. Trauma and continued anxiety result partially from ungroundedness. Safety hasn't been established. Hence, you float in your attempts to find meaning and connection nowhere to be found. You may not receive well from others. Their unreceived gifts in your behalf are unable to sufficiently weigh you down to the proper force to keep you afloat. You have a hard time slowing down enough to meditate or appreciate the moment. Your mind spins during what might be considered comforting activities like crafting, enjoying nature or museums, reading, and other inward activities. But don't let this be confused with an imbalanced yin-yang lifestyle. If you don't get enough outward activity, your mind will indeed have a hard time understanding the need for all types of grounding outlets. As we've spoken about in opposites, grounding requires both the feet to the earth in action and in stillness. If you can only go to one or the other, you likely lack grounding. In a word, grounding anchors a person. Posture serves as an indicator to how a person is anchored. Do they bend forward, lounge back, or are they pleasantly erect? Is the body calm and intentional in line with the spine? Grounding creates a fullness of presence. The following meditation will guide us in some grounding practices, but my simple grounding standard is to get into nature for a period of time and hopefully spend about 15 minutes with bare feet on grass, dirt, or rock, literally connecting foot to ground. You can ramp it up by going barefoot on the ground in pleasant sunshine, breathing fresh air, and doing yoga or tai chi simultaneously. You will feel ever empowered in your yoga goddess squat. Meditation. Holy Father, to Mother Earth, grounding down. You are standing in your favorite spot with the earth beneath you. Legs hip-width apart, arms out and down, your chin slightly raised, all body parts from head to feet stacked evenly. You take a deep breath in and a deep breath out, stimulating your vagus nerve to relax by such a full breath. Inhale once more, and again a large exhale. On the next breath in, notice the light high above in the heavens emanating downward to you, to your spot on the earth. As you look up, you notice the light is soft and inviting, while also exciting and enervating. You receive it at the crown of your head as it slowly showers into your mind, out your eyes, through your face and ears, and on downward, expanding your throat and vocal cords. You feel it pierce your heart, strengthen your arms, shooting brightly out your fingertips. It then powers your solar plexus just below the ribs. You feel the nourishment of the light as it feeds your body cavity, surrounding organs and systems, all the way to your very cells. The light melts down your legs, solidifying your kneecaps, stretching down your lower limbs to your limber ankles. Your 2 feet ignite like light bulbs as you see you are standing on a plate of gold. The light extends to the outer edges of this plate of gold, and then like tree roots rushes like lightning down into the earth beneath you. Down, down, down. The light descends, through the many layers of geology, to the very core center of the planet. It wraps around a horizontal rod at the center, then shoots back up through all the layers to your lightning roots, pulling on the golden plate and spreading once more through your already enlightened form. Again, it revisits all body parts, including refueling the light in your fingertips, heart, and eyes. It changes into whatever color hue serves you at this moment, be it aqua, fuchsia, peach, lavender, or a brilliant combination, swirling around and extending beyond your skin, several feet outward. And it finally sparkles above your head, calmly arising once again towards its heavenly force. Take another rich breath in and releasing breath out. Feeling the high frequency vibration of your being at the moment, energized, intentional, and connected with your Holy Father to your Mother Earth. You are the figure of attention here, God's holy light anchoring to you, grounding and enlivening you as you plug into the Mother Source. Each step forward as you continue in the light amplifies this connection and keeps you on mission, driving forward as you share your enlightened frequency with those in your space, far and near. Each step forward plants itself with the lightning roots beneath each footfall, securing you on your purpose. As you stop to revel in the glory of the light in your stillness, you remember and refresh the power of the grounding. Such is the gift of those who abide in the light. Real Goddess, Chapter 22. Into the Unknown. Visualize yourself in that spot of pre-earth life where God has prepared you, and you have your backpack on and your shoelaces tied like a little one about to leave for the first day of grade school. I actually envision myself in a white dress, innocent eyes, draped with a fashionable handbag full of tools my father has prepared me with for this stint on Earth. It reminds me of the 8-second ride of a rodeo bull rider who is bucked around until he meets his fate. Or the one day you've set aside for a packed adventure at an amusement park, only so many rides and attractions to fit into your allotted time. I believe as I peered over the edge of heaven down to the earth before advancing, that I experienced a mixture of excitement and apprehension. Despite my preparation, I really don't know how it will be as I strap on a body and all the unknowns I'll encounter. My heavenly parents have gently encouraged me. Remember, we are only a prayer away. You will forget us as a veil is drawn and you enter the melee of living. But we will send angels from heaven and earth to guide you to clues. We are ever so close. When Christ was born 2 millennia ago, he didn't know his mission from the get-go as that little perfect baby in a sacred manger. He learned measure upon measure, from grace to grace, until he was full of his identity to carry forth his divine mission once he entered the appropriate age of ministry. We, too, don't remember our mission and meaning as we advance through the years on our earthly sojourn. It is up to us to be instructed and inspired according to our inborn gifts, inner knowing, and unknown pre-earth preparations to find out how to advance ourselves and others back to our heavenly origins. Yet I believe as I once peered over that edge as a spirit, if I could see into my future life from that perch, I'd be surprised to see how we all might lower ourselves on the side roads and detours we all allow as we forget standing by our heavenly parents, reminding us how difficult the school day may play out. In our efforts to control what we feel we can't control, to fix what we really shouldn't be trying to fix, to manage what we feel incapable to manage, we fall to the influences of a variety of coping mechanisms. Put simply, we have forgotten who we are. So we default to the pleasures of the mind and body that numb us, take us out of the running for true living, and become a power unto ourselves to soothe what we feel only we can soothe. We eat, drink, and be merry. For all we know, tomorrow we might perhaps die. We allow the body to reign over the spirit and our intelligence as we succumb to mind-numbing addictions and activities that might cause us to shrink should we return to that original presence at the edge with our Maker. We become a bedraggled 8-second bull rider about to let go. What would we say to God? Well, I just sort of forgot you'd send any type of help, or that I was prepared with any type of tools, or that anyone but me on this earth really matters. Or, this was harder than I anticipated. Give me a little slack. Ironically, I've come to believe that often our prearranged plan for this earth life included the very things that would dig us into that deep pit, or present as that unscalable wall, or provide the brokenness we need to garner contrite hearts. that by our very drifting from our prearranged plan, we can more quickly identify the nature of God's love because He really has been right there all along.
Chapter 23, Full Joy. So, what is our salvation? What is our balm? How do we overcome the propensity to turn to the dark or mind-numbing in order to subsist? The answer lies in one word: joy. We were meant for joy. Though I'm sure God cautioned us that earth life wouldn't be all pansies and roses, I do believe He sent us full of the capacity for full joy, which requires full faith that such full joy can be had. You might argue, how can I find joy in this life I've set up? Well, I'd answer more accurately, what in this life of yours is impeding the full joy? Where have you misplaced faith in the possibility of full joy? Some say the addiction and our coping mechanisms we take on are the results of relationship mismanagement and the lack of appropriate connection with others. Have you allowed yourself to abide in circles that drag you down, hanging out in low places to share miserable company together? This may masquerade in what seems like a good group of people who actually deny true bonding by commiserating in their unhappiness together. Be a perceptive detective here. Or have you gone so far as to simply isolate because it's easier than the human condition? Addiction loves the dark. So the answer to addiction and other damaging tendencies is really quite simple, yet difficult. Connect with uplifting and edifying people. This requires being seen, understood, accepted, and then loved. The hard part of this act is that we don't want to expose our inadequacies, to be seen for what we really think we are, not enough. Remember in the opening pages how I spoke of the adversary's role in our lives? It is to ensure we continue to believe we will never be enough. We then shame ourselves for slipping back again, and we believe we are truly hopeless. How then can we ever be accepted, or even possibly loved? Addiction hides out in the bleakness, all alone. This is the joy of how our God works. Take into account that others were peering over their respective edges before this life, pondering on the excitement and apprehension before them, just as we were. Sometimes we may believe no one else needs anyone else. We are alone in our desires to connect. If we reach out, we will seem needy or nerdy or not enough. So we fall back on what we know works, our addictions. But our addictions don't bring true joy, only momentary pleasure. And others experience the same. We are made of the very same fabric, you and me. If you will open your spiritual eyes and fine-tune your spiritual hearing, you will begin to see the circles of those God sends into your space to bless your life and accompany you on your journey. I would venture to suggest that you take a careful look at each and every person in your life right now. How is the maze of connections interrelated? Who knows who that is looking for just what you are? How authentically can you show up when they stand before you, ready to be supportive with you? They are only a breath away. And how often do we reject the possibility of such social opportunities that allow for full joy? Expect them and receive them as God's gift to each other. Follow through on promptings to reach out, to befriend, to lift up the downhearted, who do the same for you. Others need you like you need them. It's all part of God's familial plan.
True self. Now, you may think it natural to say that others don't connect with you, that you wouldn't turn to other maladaptive tendencies if others could just get on board with you. It's their fault. So let's touch on accountability and ownership. There is a quick path to losing your step on the goddess track. Blame, shame, and embarrassment. All of these cast judgment where they don't belong. Whatever emotion, or energy in motion, you possess, you must accept it as your own. You can't say, somebody makes me feel this way, because two separate people may react completely differently. One may take a comment as a compliment, while another may take it as a jab. What others think of you is none of your business. You must own what you feel instead of casting blame. Your reaction very likely stems back to incidences that happened in your first years of life anyway. So it isn't even fair to cast blame that someone else is the cause of your problems later. But again, one doesn't internalize taking accountability to the point of shame. Shame is a common exile in every addiction and certainly doesn't sustain your progression. If you insist someone should pander to your wishes and fulfill a role you've destined them to provide, they will likely shun it with uneasiness. When you present as self-full and interested in others' well-being, they'll likely provide you with what you are providing them. It's a symbiotic relationship that works wonders. And it takes a moving out of yourself to know how to love yourself because you feel God's love and love Him too, and then extend that love to others. Having said all this about addiction and owning what is yours, I'll offer this solution. So long as a woman works toward genuine and deep authenticity, she will find her life coming together like that puzzle piece that finally fits. When you understand your true self in God's eyes, you will awaken to a number of reasons you want to present as your best self, nothing less. True goddess self manifests as expansive, yet humble, and meek, yet sure, because she sees herself through God's eyes, like you might see your own child in all his or her amazement. A woman in her true self is calm, courageous, clear-minded, creative, connected, compassionate, curious, and confident. A deeply authentic woman doesn't should on herself, adapting to outward standards that clash with her inner truth. She doesn't people-please for the sake of only making others happy. It must ring true with her own value standards. You must agree, you are always the world's expert on what you believe. This woman is open, not vulnerable, like some experts say we should aspire. Think about it. If we are seeking goddess status, and God is not a vulnerable being, then a woman doesn't lower herself either to vulnerability. Vulnerable is defined as susceptible, unguarded, endangered. She seeks to be open yet true. As she achieves the rank of altruism and authenticity grounded in godly love, choices come naturally and others learn to love her for exactly who she is. Meditation, the beach. Find a comfortable position with your arms and legs uncrossed and relaxed. I am going to count from 1 to 10, and starting at your feet, I want you to imagine warmth spreading up your body to the top of your head. 1. You are feeling warm and relaxed as you allow all parts of your body to melt down. 2. Your feet are unencumbered and wiggle a little as they let go. 3. Your legs begin to feel jellyish as you flex your muscles and then let them completely relax. 4. You feel the deepness in your hip and pelvic area, letting go of the stomach and core muscles. 5. Deeply inhale and then exhale, letting it all out. Inhale, exhale once again. 6. Tense your shoulders, then let them go as the warmth spreads down your arms from elbows to wrists to your fingers. 7. Imagine heaviness down your spine as arms and torso meet the surface below you. 8. Allow your face to release. The jaw, the eyelids, the neck. 9. Feel the weight of your head as it draws backward, wherever it may land. 10. You feel the comfort and meltedness from the tip of your head down to the tips of your toes. Complete, deep relaxation. I want you to imagine a beach with sand, a little hill, a path, and seagulls overhead. Feel the breeze around you. Hear the crashing, intermittent waves. Imagine whatever other sounds, sights, and smells you will. I'm going to count to 5 as you go down the path to the water, relaxing deeper and deeper. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Any other outside noise stays in the background. Only listen to my voice and the sounds you hear at the beach. I'm going to ask questions of your manager self, who we will call inner mind. The manager, or inner mind, answers yes or no for you. Asking the inner mind, is there any pain, sadness, anger, fear, guilt, shame, or loneliness in the inner mind? If yes, allow the inner mind to process this. Use your support system, whatever that is, to get rid of the offender. Christ is an excellent resource as the master healer. Then you may go in with a vacuum to clear it away. Inner mind, is that good now? Is there still any pain, sadness, anger, fear, guilt, shame, or loneliness in the inner mind? If so, again, use your support system to clear it away. Are there any parts inside other than the original self? Do they feel pain or sadness? Allow inner mind to process this using whatever support you have. Are there any holes in your energy force? Let your inner mind heal any openings in your energy force, using your support system as needed. Does that feel strong now? Strengthen your original self as fully powerful. Gather together your gifts and strengths of your original self and weave it into the fabric of your highest being. We are children of a loving God, receiving light, continuing in God, and receiving more light are what we are created to do. From the very beginning, we followed the light. We followed our Heavenly Father and His plan. Seeking the light is in our spiritual DNA. It's time to leave your peaceful beach, up the little path, and back to the present. I'm going to count to 5, and you'll regain access to your full senses once more. 1, 2, 3, full. 5. Real Goddess, Chapter 25. Heart Nurturing. I've often wondered why the organ of the heart, somewhat gruesome in its constitution, is also considered the center of love, which is nothing gruesome. Is there an energetic overlay coinciding with the residence of the heart to the body? Like the mind, intelligence serves as the power to the physical brain, and our spirit powers the physical body, I believe love powers the vitality of the heart. Just breeze through these scriptural descriptions of the heart. Affections of, all thy, broken, changed, cheer up your, corrupted, courageous, crying, desire of, exceeding, evil, full purpose of, glad, glorified, grieving, greatness of, groaning, guiltless, hardened, have full sway in, holiness of, imaginations of, inspired, javelin to the, joyful, led away, lifted up. Lift up your, love with all your, meek and lowly of, murderous, planted in your, pondering, power over, pour in, prideful, puffed up, prepared, pure, stricken, stabbing the, rage in the, real intent of, rejoicing, sanctification of, Satan with a hold upon, set upon riches, sincerity of, softened, sorrowful, stolen, stirred up in anger, stoutness of, stubbornness of, thankful, thoughtful, turned, uncircumcised of, unsteadiness of, whole, wicked, willingness of, one, yielding, heart. It seems the condition of our heart explains the condition of who we really are. Hence, would it not make sense that our most sincerest of prayers should be to have our hearts filled with God's love? The two great commandments described by Jesus Christ involve the heart. Thou shalt love the Lord thy God with all thy heart, and with all thy soul, and with all thy mind. And, thou shalt love thy neighbor as thyself. Matthew 22:37. Robin Johnson, the heart whisperer, says, Our heart is a portal for the Spirit and a source of truth. It is the wellspring of charity and compassion and our connection to love. Of all the things that God could ask us to sacrifice, a broken heart and a contrite spirit are the purest gifts we could give Him to show our obedience, submission, and love. I assert that to reach the goddess status, our bodies, from the heart to the veins and arteries and back, must be infused with God's love. Achieving this love serves as the golden ticket past those pearly gates where the roads are paved in gold. The greatest of living conditions exist when the people are of one heart and mind. This doesn't mean they all think the same. It means they have softened, strengthened, and connected their hearts to a place of pure acceptance. It means they assume the best case scenario in all they see around them, offering the benefit of the doubt. For example, when I find myself behind a bad driver who is negotiating my ease in getting somewhere, I generally go through this quick mental process. A. Why can't that idiot get it together? Don't they know I'm trying to get somewhere? To B. What if that were my father driving that vehicle? I have no idea what's going on in that car at this moment. I choose to issue gobs of compassion and well-being in their behalf, and if they offer any off gestures as I eventually pass them, I'll wave with giddy friendliness. Would it not make sense that we do all in our power to nurture our very heart, which is our core command center, our holy of holies, our all-knowing guidance system? This means acute attention to what goes in and out, to what may be barring the heart from openness, understanding how to heal it when it's broken, through the power of Christ, and giving it fully to our Creator, for He then returns it expanded. This means feeling our heartache and despair lest it hunker down and become impenetrable, and replacing the feelings with gratitude and forgiveness and understanding. Nurturing the heart includes good nutrition, exercise, balance, and rest. The physical translates to increased heart-spirit potential when given the resources to function well. Heart nurturing means tuning into the frequency of love, of connecting with others heart to have an inner knowing despite words. It means understanding that behind others' hard-covered hearts are soft emotions too delicate to expose. Hardening of the heart is a safety mechanism done in self-preservation. But a hard and closed heart is susceptible to the effects of the adversary no matter the innocent attempt at defense. Allowing the hard-hearted person permission to ease the strife and unburden the latchets holding it tightly closed is like a squirrel, afraid to accept food from a stranger at first, eventually climbing onto the fleshy hand, nibbling the crust as it curiously shifts its beady eyes once the conditions of gentleness are set. A full heart is full of the self-compassion we allow others, loving our neighbor as ourselves. When an individual's vibrational frequency, or vibe, reaches the level of abiding in love, she has risen above shame, guilt, apathy, grief, and fear. She has accomplished healthy desire, courage, neutrality, willingness, acceptance, and reason. And merged with godly love is joy, peace, and enlightenment, or actualization. The goddess. She is big-hearted, good-hearted, having a heart of gold. She is the pure in heart, who shall see God.
Real Goddess, Chapter 26. Loving Your Potential God Husband. It doesn't take many love songs to find that the answer to blissful relationship loving is to give your man all of your love. And if you believe those lyrics, you must have skipped over the previous chapter that says to love God with all your heart. Technically, your husband is next in line, included with loving your neighbor. But if you have made vows or covenants with him, he rightly has priority seating to your next affections. And in such ranking, things like children, jobs, sports, and really anything else takes a back seat to loving your spouse next, and God most. If you are to be composed of godly love as an eventual goddess, it's integral you learn this priority seating. You cleave unto each other, but with God first, while not becoming enmeshed. You please each other, but with God foremost, and self equally. You sacrifice for each other, but not more than you'd sacrifice for God or yourself. Remember, the 2 great commandments includes loving yourself. Serving means equally receiving. You are a peacemaker, not a peacekeeper. You comfort and mourn with him in empathy, but you love yourself enough to not get stuck there. You create your lovely world, even if he questions it, because you have God primarily in mind and heart. You live by honesty, but only if it doesn't hurt you, loving yourself. You live by kindness without having to be 100% available because your boundaries show self-love. You reach outward for help as needed if he seems he isn't loving you, out of self-love. He isn't a God yet, either. You bridge the gap between selfless and selfish at self-full. How can you both not love you if you are full of God's divinity and all that entails? Issuing apologies takes your feelings into account. Loving self, you let him take responsibility of what is rightfully his. Trust is earned, not expected. You relinquish control and judgment to God, not your spouse, if you love and trust God most. You are willing to give of yourself, but not to the point of overburdened if you are in alignment with loving God first. Happiness is equally considered, loving husband as self. You realize that God trusts you to make your choices without his over-involvement because that is the responsibility of a goddess in training, the original gift of agency. When you individuate or prepare for your self-success, your spouse is on board because he loves you enough for you to find yourself. You understand the balance of autonomy and dependency to enjoyable interdependency. When tough happens, you let go and let God, as he is full of perfect love and knowing for you. You share and receive honest communication because of sharing equal love. You both ideally love emotionally maturely because you've given grievances and surrendered damaging history to God. We choose, cherish, and treasure each other. We securely attach to one another in a balanced love for one another. Intimacies are well practiced from verbal, intellectual, emotional, and psychological to spiritual, physical, and sexual. You give sexually to one another as a bonding activity that considers the desires of both man and wife, uniting your very souls together. You invest in one another with great interest. You assure each other and others that each is the greatest man or woman alive, at least for each other. You are both filled with virtuosity, fidelity, humor, fun, flexibility, cooperation, appreciation, and respect. And when this isn't the ideal, because you love one another like you love yourself, you give room and patience for when the other, or yourself, is not there yet. Remember this: we've, most of us, been given decades and more of life to reach idyllic perfection for each other.
Meditation. The Garden of Love. You find yourself sitting on a bench in a gorgeous, luscious flower garden. A breeze floats through the meadow, over the hill, and up the bench to where you lounge, through your flowing hair. Violet vines surround the trellis hanging above and around you. The sun is about to set, and you welcome its colourful display. A sensual wisp of the fragrance of honeysuckle swells around you as you notice pink collecting beneath nearby clouds. You breathe in the perfect air surrounding the vicinity as you notice a presence standing in a marble archway a stone's throw away. He hasn't noticed you yet, but it is your beloved. He gazes softly toward the setting sun, where you know you'd see its reflection in his eyes, should you be in his arms. He appears thoughtful, likely pondering the verities of life. And then he breathes soundly out and shifts his weight, noticing you for the first time. You feel shivers down your spine and goosebumps down your arms. This is your beloved. And you can't believe he's chosen you. And that in all the pickings, you found him among millions. Practically your perfect match. He's chosen to stay by your side for eternity, and you can't believe your lucky stars. One side of his mouth turns upward, and you wonder what he's thinking. What should he be thinking? Oh, it doesn't really matter. You're set for eternity with this find. It will be the best date night ever, without end. But no, why the mirth in his expression? Perhaps you have a smudge across your forehead, or your hair is woefully out of place. Or he's recalling a funny incident. Now your awe turns to curiosity mixed with adoration. Even with his sideways smirk, he's incredibly handsome, and he's yours for eternity, and you are his. So lucky, so blessed. Did we choose each other before our earthly stay? Did we sign a contract? Did we find each other eons ago and promise we'd meet up again? Did we share similar friendships? Did we prepare together, or entertain each other, or tease one another? Did we consider family, or were we all family friends? Did we know our future children? Did we know the hardships we'd experience and Pinky promised to keep it all together nevertheless? Did we understand exactly what was in our path and promise upon promise to be there for each other no matter what? Did we gather together with our Maker's divine parents, two heavenly children? As I think on my next question, he begins to advance in my direction over a stone bridge and past a bubbling waterfall. I wipe my forehead and situate my hair. As he approaches, I notice the vibrant blue of his sparkling eyes, and realize he's upturning the other side of his grin as well. I can't help but probe him as to why the smile. He chuckles for a beat and then satiates my wonder. I was just thinking how I can't believe I have you for all eternity.
Chapter 27. Goddess Sex. Consider this little tidbit as we look into the eternities. We are sexual beings. That capacity doesn't end at immortality. No celibacy is expected or required, and my assumption is that goddess sex far outrivals earthly sex. Here is what many dwellers of the world fail to grasp. Worldly chastity is integral to heavenly sex. Those who believe otherwise would support that evil is good and good is evil. Adultery and fornication are but part of our indulgent existence. These people fail to recognize how godly sex increases and creates capacity to love, to propagate, to be more godly. You share the deepest of intimacy with one true and committed lover that separates you from others, while increasing both of your satisfaction in your unique and exclusive relationship. Goddess sex supports both parties being sexual and functional with opportunities for pleasure, not just for accommodation. Desiring, not just desirable. Accountable and in control. Self-confronting for your part in the union, both helpful and not. Desiring for your consummation to be developmental, maturing, discerning, while being seen, understood, accepted, and loved because of individual integrity, surrendering what is not really yours to control. There are no normals, no musts, no unreasonable pressures, no expected patterns or minimums or maximums in goddess sex. You are not each other's all, but a part of a blessing to one another. With strong self-intimacy, you begin finding ways to healthily fulfill your own needs, reaching out to God for that which you don't need to dump on your spouse. I've heard it said, you can't have enough of what you really don't need. You depend less on what a spouse isn't able or willing to give and love each other more in the process. You learn emotional regulation, to self-soothe, and experience the gamut of emotions without it overwhelming one another. An individuated and differentiated loving wife knows where emotional limits begin and end, in life and in the bedroom. Add to all this a good dose of patience, perspective, and compassion. We aren't gods yet. A truly intimate relationship lets both people know on the deepest level who they each truly are, valuing and appreciating each other despite inevitable differences and weaknesses. Inherent characteristics in each other will be your pleasure and opportunity to discover and enhance. True goddess love bursts with intimacy, commitment, and passion, plus godly creativity for promising novelty. In goddess sex, neither person feels the need to change the other or to change themselves in fundamental ways. This objective approach is unconditional loving, and neither will violate each other's sense of safety and security. Issues are confronted by both spouses with understanding, curiosity, and a willingness to engage with whatever problems have come up. They work together when possible and turn to God always. True intimacy requires facing problems with courage and faith that the relationship is more important than whatever crisis is going on at the moment. You release to the Lord a past that isn't serving you, believing much better is to come. An intimate connection is one where you make it easy for one another to honestly and freely open to each other with the preferred goal of being at peace with yourself so it transfers outside of you. We do our very best to be someone worth being intimate with, someone to invest in, strengthening hearts through time and cherishing. You feel each other's true intimacy, kindness, strength, and valuing of one another through genuine goddess sex, touching each other's hearts before you touch their bodies. Jeffrey R. Holland states, sexual intimacy is not only a symbolic union between a man and a woman, the uniting of their very souls, but it is also symbolic of a union between mortals and deity, between otherwise ordinary and fallible humans uniting for a rare and special moment with God Himself and all the powers by which He gives life in this wide universe of ours. Sex is a symbol of committed, specific union that draws a couple closer together as they draw closer to God. Polishing goddess sex on earth, we can conclude this: celestial sex is out of this world.
creating your present world. I've said it over and over, and I'll say it once more. As a goddess, you will be the supreme creator, the production director, and master architect of your eventual world. Do you think God sent us to this earth life knowing the real goods could only be had later? Some call it a rare faith that inspires a person to architect their current world to their specific likings. As a goddess in training, I believe we are expected to learn to create our perfect world right here. This is not to say we control or manipulate or force others to our liking, but to reach out intentionally for the things that aid us in fulfilling our mission and purpose here on earth. In other words, God has no problem assisting us when we are doing His will our way to better humanity and self. This rare faith requires setting up a hope backed by delicious emotion of the senses and imagination, letting full hope take flight before doubt creeps in. It is a letting go of the outcome and quieting the intellect that can't see the way out or up, and fully expecting the hoped-for thing to arrive in your life. I believe God is adept enough at omnipotence to merely think what He wants for it to appear. God's faith isn't even faith. It's perfect knowing what He wants will materialize. Creative consciousness means there is more than just a piece of the pie for everyone. It means the pie grows larger and everyone receives a larger piece. Just as you can qualify to build your own world and inhabitants, so can anyone who follows God's laws. They that are obedient to His laws receive the coinciding promised blessings. With our heaven on earth mentality, so is equal abundance available for everyone on earth. It's just a faith thought away. The 100-year-old book, As a Man Thinketh by James Allen says, "Mind is the master power that molds and makes. A man is mind and evermore he takes. The tool of thought and shaping what he wills, brings forth 1,000 joys, 1,000 ills. He thinks in secret, and it comes to pass. Environment is but his looking glass." We attract our deepest desires. We attract what we are. And how do we attract what we are? The answer is that we must know why we want what we want. Is it to fill our wallets or our pride? Or is it to satisfy something intrinsic buried deeper inside? Will the thing we attract satisfy a deep yearning? Ask yourself why you want it again and again until you reach emotion. This is what you are at your core, the result of this identified emotion. Then use that emotion as incentive to accomplish your why. And here's a hint. Money is usually not the answer. Your deepest desires often have everything to do with what money cannot buy. For me, the emotion that elicits desire most ardently is keeping an eternal family happily together. When you've identified what is your want, have God's blessing on that thing, and then have your why often at the forefront of your mind, the desired thing then comes into your being or your space just when it is right for you. What you want wants you. Driving intentionally by attracting a desired result isn't magic or trickery. It is simply practicing training to be a goddess who can materialize her ideal wishes. Meditation. Live life so your dreams are jealous. Imagine your happy place. Your perfect place. It has the perfect smells, the perfect sounds, the perfect sights, the perfect tastes, the perfect companions, the perfect feel, the perfect comfort or exhilaration. Out on the horizon, you notice a small dot. To your surprise, it begins to grow larger. You then notice that it not only grows larger, but it is actually advancing closer to you, and closer again, until it takes form and you find it is not a dot, but a silver box with a lid and a bright red bow. It appears to be a present or gift. You wonder for whom the gift is intended when you hear a calm but direct voice emanating from the box, asking one question. What is it that you'd like? You feel like a small child writing up your Christmas list that you know you may never receive half of the things on your list. As you continue to ponder this question, as if the voice knew your thoughts, it then asks, what is it that you'd really like? You begin to expand your thinking to what you know you should like. World peace, to never have to go to work again, children who never fight, a day without having to cook, and on. The voice interrupts your thinking once again as it asks, what is it that you'd really, really like? So you start to get into it. Well, I'd like a satisfying job that seems I never work, and I'd like children who are kind enough to get along well with one another, and I'd like easy, nutritious, and tasty meals that don't seem like cooking, or whatever it is you might say for yourself. No surprise, the voice further inquires, what is it that you'd really, really, really like? Well, at this insistence, you draw deep within your heart to what you believe you can never actually ever have. Who are you to think you could have this thing? Who are you to believe you could actually be the kind of person who could actually receive this kind of thing? Who are you to believe you could actually be the kind of person who would feel deserving to easily receive this kind of thing? The voice changes its tactic. Go ahead, look inside. You lift the shiny lid with the red bow and peer inside. You can't believe your eyes. In addition to what you see there, you also feel the complete confidence and acceptance that the very thing you believe you could never have is right there within your grasp. In fact, it feels it's always been there within your grasp. What has been hiding it? Next comes a clear message to your mind. You don't have to actually strive for this ideal, for the contents of this box. You may invite it into your life. You may accept it as already present, like it has always been. And you may choose to invest in and suffuse your life with it through your valiant endeavoring to acquire it through your honest striving. Whatever the case, it's yours. So keep it, and hold it, and imagine its existence with every fiber of your being. In the realm of waking or sleep, you are one of the rare few who has the privilege of living life, so your dreams are jealous.
Goddess Commitment. In one of my favorite movies, Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, Violet Beauregard is a champion gum chewer. It appears whenever she has something to concentrate on in order to win, like her record of chewing the same piece of gum the longest, her mother will remind her,
Eye on the prize, Violet, eye on the prize. It is with some concern that I mingle with many women in my world who seem to all too often take their eye off the prize. They have forgotten, or never learned, the purpose of this earth-life journey, to prepare themselves for eventual goddesshood. They have taken their eye off the prize. For example, they tell me they don't have time to read scriptures, the very goddess training manual. They don't take the effort to pray together as a family to their Heavenly Father, the most important of people in their lives of whom to communicate. They don't follow God's commandments, believing there is always repentance. They forget that the essential building up of their spirit is what trains them to be in God's presence and qualify for their own exaltation. But somehow, they forget that the essential building up of their spirit is what trains them to be in God's presence and qualify for their own exaltation. But somehow, they have time to watch movies, often objectionable movies. They have time to go clothes shopping. They have time to preserve the fruit off their trees or their scrapbook memories. They invest effort into well-planned vacations, and they wouldn't dare fail to work long enough for a much-needed paycheck. They plan fancy meals, get together with friends for barbecues, and try a multitude of new recipes. They'll never miss a baseball game of their child, will create comfortable surroundings for their family, and are forever arranging playdates with the neighborhood kids. But they'll fail to plan a time with their God. They'll miss quiet meditating on their God, and spend time on frivolous things that do nothing to further their progression. And then they complain. I'm just too busy. You know how it is. Yes, I used to know exactly how that was. You feel a measure of validation when you keep yourself busy and moving. How important am I that my child has a ball game almost every night of this week? How important am I that my job needs me so much? How important am I that so many people want me to join them in their entertainment? But when you live with an eternal perspective, which, as I've mentioned, means living mindfully in the moment right now, you know that every way you fill your life right now will correspond with your eternal reward. So for me, this means I read scriptures before I read the latest romance adventure novel. For me, this means I attend church and other available worship services before I watch a decent movie. For me, this means I have attended to my spiritual growth before I spend time teaching my child. Of course, this assumes moderation in all things and keeping your spirit in tune with God's Spirit to know what is correct for you and your family. It's simple mathematics that where you give, you will receive. And where you prioritize, you are blessed. Remember, as it reads in Luke 12:48, to whom much is given, much will be required. I am making the effort, and I pray you will too. I want you there with me, dear sister. No care in the world. Sleep meditation. The time is now. The time is now for nurturing you. You've taken care of and learned from today. You've planned for tomorrow. And now, there is only now. You've written your nightly letter to God. You are in His hands at this very moment. You've written your gratitude list, only 3 items long, so you must whittle it down to those 3 lines. You learned long ago not to inventory the day, but to truly reflect back on the things of this day that left your heart ringing with joy, that left your mind in sweet contemplation, or that had you wringing your hands in excitement and anticipation. You've also noted one specific way in which you saw God's hand in your life. Again, you know it must be condensed into the one line of how He created a new thought change or a mini miracle this day for you. You've recorded on a burn page the events or thoughts of the day that brought you angst. You cancelled them out by a double-lined counter-objection to why the angst produces are not true. You know that worry is made up of things that will most likely never appear. So you've chosen to not dwell on them, and you've realigned your focus with God's opinion of you before laying your head on your pillow. And for the fun part, you've taken something of which you'd like to know the answer, something you'd like to draw from your subconscious when you slip deliciously into alpha, theta, then delta brainwaves, and eventually pleasant REM. After all, if you could direct your dreaming in a supportive way, why not let it work for your good? Maybe you are wondering about a career change, or how to approach your child differently, or how to rearrange a shelf, or trying to solve a theorem you can't quite put your finger on. And maybe you'd like to know the mysteries of God. Thankfully, God answers through dreams, so dream away. Plant in your mind, as you consider the benefit the dark provides sliding into slumber, someone of whom you love and are thankful for, or of whom you'd like to make better acquaintance. Your very sleep expands their value in your life and may even attract them sooner into your day. As those pesky concerns of the day arise, with absolutely nothing you can do about them at this very moment, you imagine a bureau dresser full of many small drawers, each perhaps the size of a small purse. Each drawer may insist they must remain open with your attention, but you gently close them one by one as they beckon, reminding them you will return to open them at another convenient time. If they nudge themselves open, you may pause to write them down if needed on a pad of paper next to your bed, and you again quietly and insistently shut them with finality. Or, for the especially persistent drawers, you place one of God's sentinels by them, ensuring they will be watched over until dawn arises. You feel your muscles relax, your neck and shoulder melt into your pillow. Your hips and spine sink into the softness. Your forehead and jaw muscles slacken as your teeth slightly part. Your head recedes even further into the pillow. Your breath becomes deeper and richer. Each out-breath a letting go, and each breath drawn in a reminder of the fullness of living. In and out, reaching further into surrendering bliss. Truly, there is no care in the world, and your mind, heart, and spirit have been prepared with the things of light to welcome the night and the darkness of your blessed rest. In and out, in and out. Dream on, dear one.
Death, a happy agreement. My co-worker at university asked me and a group of my fellow co-workers as a young adult, what would be your response if you were locked up in a completely white room with nothing in it and no door to get out? Most of the answers talked about how they would devise a way out or how they'd simply go crazy. He smiled when I answered that I'd simply lie down and completely enjoy it. The answer to his riddle was that how you respond to the white room scenario is how you view death. In the book, The Road, by Cormac McCarthy, a man and his boy live in a post-apocalyptic world where every day is a struggle to survive and avoid marauders bent on cannibalism. I coerced myself through this book, compelled by the ending I must discover. And this is what I found at the end pages. Those who fear death most believe in God least. So the converse is also true. Those who believe in God most fear death least. Death is a meeting with your makers. It is a chance to fall into their perfectly loving arms and exclaim,
I did it. And they will reply, we knew you could do it. It's a chance for happy reunions with those who've already passed or who have yet to grace the planet. It's old friends newly remembered. It's life's missions completed. Do our loved ones expect our parting of the veil to return to our heavenly home? Was there an agreement for when we'd return? Is the party all ready and waiting? I've heard some say death is no game of fate. It is determined from your spirit to God's spirit. If so, could it be that when you reach a particular age or circumstance, a flash of understanding from Father to Spirit self transfers, and you know the gig is over? You kick the bucket? Or perhaps more accurately, you complete your tenancy? Whatever the case, can you say you fear death? What are your thoughts in that purely white room without an exit? Or are you excited for your next adventure, for your omniscience, omnipotence, your omnipresence? As I wind the clock to claim that day mentioned in the prologue of this book, I repeat from the very beginning. I'm standing on a high mountain peak nestled among other towering mountain peaks. Everything about the moment is perfect. The sun is warm at its perfect pitch. The breeze just enough to cool off the skin. Hunger is nowhere to even think about. Flowers, pines, and freshness emit their lustrous combined scent. I see cotton ball clouds amid a piercing blue sky. I look down to see wildflowers every color of the rainbow in full beckoning bloom. As I look down at myself, I see everything taking up its perfect space. In a word, I feel enchanting. I look further down and off to the left side, where I notice a high alpine lake, pristine and framed attractively by the firs surrounding it. No surprise, there's my husband sitting on the perfect rock, fishing pole in hand, and he's just caught a large trout. Would he look up at me and smile? Yes. He flashes me a stunning smile, and I realize everything is just, well, perfection. For more information about the theological beliefs of the author, visit churchofjesuschrist.org.